The cooks scurried like frightened mice in the dank passages beneath Maegor's holdfast, iron pots clanging in a fevered rhythm that echoed off stone older than memory. Somewhere above their heads, Lord Renly's laughter rang out through the vaulted hallways, loud, wine-thick, and careless. Yet even that familiar sound felt brittle these days, as if the very air in the Red Keep buzzed with sparks waiting for tinder. King Robert Baratheon heard none of it. He stood before a narrow slit of a window in the Tower of the Hand, massive shoulders hunched beneath a bearskin cloak, staring toward the mouth of Blackwater Bay where a wind-tattered fog rolled restlessly over dark water. In that shifting mist he imagined wings. He had laughed at the first rumor. Dragons, the small folk whispered in the taverns of Flea Bottom. Scaly, fire-snorting demons come again from the smoking ruin of Valyria, led by a silver-haired girl no older than Renly's paramours. Horseshit, Robert had grumbled, reaching for another tankard. He had hunted boar the size of ponies, wrestled bulls for wagers in Storm's End's yard, fought Prince Rhaegar beside that damnable ford of the Trident. But dragons? Dead as Harrenhal's ghosts. Then ravens began arriving from Pentos and Tyrosh, bearing the identical fearful script. A fleet of exotic war galleys trimmed in black, their prows carved into open-mawed beasts. A pale queen astride a scaled shadow that shrieked like the world's ending before alighting upon scorched beaches. By the third raven the king's laugh had withered, leaving only silence and an ache in his gut, deep as any wound iron could carve. She'll sail for King's Landing. Lord Eddard Stark had warned him in the council chamber 3 nights past, voice low and steady as fresh-fallen snow. You took her father's throne. She means to reclaim it. Robert's fists clenched atop the painted table, cracking open the dried blood of old scars upon his knuckles. A feverish itch coiled in his muscles, the ancient thrill of battles sung around campfires, a younger self surging up from ale-drowned memory. Yet the mirror betrayed him each morning. The protruding gut, the purple spiderwebs threading his cheeks, the black hair laced thick with gray. Once he would have met the dragon seed with hammer in hand and the laughter of the storm coursing in his veins. Now he felt the weight of every cup, every feast, every careless night since the rebellion had been won. Across the bay a bell began pealing, high and frantic. Robert jerked from his reverie. Fires burned along the city's distant seawall, tiny orange tongues chewing at the dark. He touched the cold steel at his waist. Even dulled by years of disuse, the warhammer remained a reassuring heft against his palm. Your Grace. A shadow darkened the doorway. Lord Stannis stood rigid as an iron rod, face drawn thinner than ever, blue eyes smoldering beneath a knitted brow. The chain crews report all links in place. Should the Targaryen girl force the mouth of the river, she'll find a trap fit for dragons. He did not smile, Stannis never smiled, but there was a cruel satisfaction in his tone. Robert snorted. Let us hope she obliges and sails straight into your snare. Hope is the luxury of men without duties, Stannis said. Robert's lips twitched upward despite himself. Felt foreign, rusty. Still quoting Maester Cresson to me, brother? Stannis did not reply. He turned and strode down the corridor, cloak snapping behind him, already half lost in tactical calculations. Robert watched him go. Duty, yes. The same word that had once bound their brotherhood tighter than any smith's rivet, long before grievances widened into chasms, before Storm's End and Dragonstone and the long, lean years that followed. A sharp pang speared Robert's chest, and for an instant he feared his heart failed him. Then he realized it was only a ghost of youth mourning. He tore his gaze from the fog. War waited, and war would not be stayed by nostalgia. Tyrion Lannister found Lord Varys lingering in the shadow of the royal sept, slender fingers clasped before the voluminous folds of lavender silk that today passed for robes. The eunuch's face gleamed in the torchlight, soft, serene, unreadable. Our Silver Queen has 3 dragons, so the tales insist, Tyrion said without preamble. Tell me, Spider, how does one defend a city of stone against fire given form? With prayer, my lord. Varys fluttered his eyelids as though bestowing a benediction. The faith teaches that the warrior shields the valiant and the mother shelters the innocent. Tyrion snorted. Then let the warrior wield wildfire and the mother raise scorpions upon the walls. For steel and alchemy are all the gods we can count upon tonight. A soft smile. You mislike miracles. I mislike relying on them. Tyrion pivoted, boots clicking against marble. The Blackwater stretched beyond the courtyard, a black mirror broken by moon glints and flame. The fleet anchored there, 400 ships flying Baratheon stags and Lannister lions, looked impressive enough from this height. Yet the hand of the king knew numbers meant little if panicked men abandoned their oars at the first plume of dragonfire. Fear cut courage quicker than any blade. His grace seems recovered, Varys offered. Recovered, perhaps. But is he ready? Tyrion wondered aloud. Stags do not sprout wings. The eunuch inclined his head, expression unreadable. A soldier is more than the sum of his sinews, my lord. Inspiration can forge blades of men's hearts. Let us pray this particular soldier recalls how to swing his hammer without toppling over. Tyrion departed before Varys could reply, the scurrying of the eunuch's soft slippers fading behind him like retreating whispers. On Dragonstone's crown, Daenerys Targaryen stood barefooted upon a crumbling gargoyle, sea wind whipping silver hair across her cheeks like living silk. Below, black waves battered the basalt cliffs with thunderous fury. Above, two shadows danced across bruised clouds, Drogon and Regal, great wings carving the gale, shrieks carrying over the surf like ripping canvas. The third shadow, Viserion, roost upon the island's dormant volcano, pale scales drinking the last violet light of dusk. Her heart soared at the sight of them. Her children, her vengeance, her right. Yet tonight a chill traced her spine. The raven from Salador San had reached her at dawn. King Robert rallies every ship in Blackwater Bay, the Lyseni sells word wrote, and the green land bristles with scorpion bolts enough to skewer the moon. Sail swift or sail cunning. Dragons alone will not win this war. Dragons alone had carried her across the red waste. Dragons had burned Cartha's betrayers to bone and smoke. Dragons had freed Astapor and Meereen and toppled the Great Pyramid's harpy. Dragons had become legend again, her legend. But Westeros was not slavers and merchant princes. Westeros was the land of Robert Baratheon, the usurper whose hammer had smashed the Targaryen line like salted crab shells. He had killed her father, dethroned her house, sent her mother fleeing into exile heavy with child. Robert Baratheon had stolen her birthright, and now he and his bastards feasted beneath dragon skulls mounted in his halls like hunting trophies. She would tear those halls down stone by hateful stone. Yet she remembered Ser Barristan's words. Robert the Reaver they once called him, a giant of a man who fought beside thunder and crushed chests beneath his hammer. That was 20 years past. Barristan had conceded, but in battle a spirit like his often burns brightest at the final hour. Behind her, bootsteps crunched gravel. Ser Jorah Mormont eased to her side, cloak flapping violently. "My queen," he said, voice roughened by wind. "The tide favors a silent approach past the Scourge Rocks at dawn. We could be on the Blackwater by midday, and the girl with 3 dragons will soar above the river by dusk," Daenerys murmured, still watching her children wheel. "Let them see hope upon the horizon and dread in the sky." Jorah hesitated. Robert is no callow boy. If he stands upon the walls, he will have prepared every manner of trap for your dragons. "A dragon is not trapped," she said, "only delayed." Her gaze drifted to the distant haze where King's Landing lay hidden. "Tell the captains, we sail within the hour." In the bowels of the Red Keep, pyromancers of the Alchemists' Guild chanted over emerald flames. Candlelight warped across their golden masks, making demons of mortal men. Thin rivulets of wildfire oozed through glass gutters into heavy-bellied clay pots lined row on row along the floor. Haleen the pyromancer, gaunt and twitching, pressed one such pot into the waiting arms of Ser Jaime Lannister. "Treat her as a jealous maiden, Ser," the pyromancer warned. "She yearns for the heat of men. Deny her, and she will burst for spite." Jaime curled a lip. "Comforting." He turned, half-heartedly swinging the pot's weight as though mulling whether to fling it at Haleen's head instead. But duty called. He strode toward the lift that would carry him to the walls. Above, gold cloaks scrambled along battlements, mounting freshly tarred scorpions, stacking barrels of pitch, stringing more of that accursed wildfire beneath riveted lids. The reek of it filled his nostrils. Oily, chemical, sinful. A single spark would doom them all. Beneath the clangor, Jaime heard his own pulse. Steady, measured, as when he had stood before Rhaegar Targaryen's children that final, damnable day. Dragons or no, the taste of kingslaying still clung to the back of his throat, bitter as bile. Somewhere in the maze of torches King Robert barked orders, voice raw and booming. Jaime could not see him yet, but he pictured the bear-sized man gripping his hammer with white-knuckled fervor, eyes bright with that old madness that had first drawn banners to his cause. For an instant Jaime felt the pull of it, that reckless ferocity that made men gods on the battlefield. "Lannister!" Robert's shout rang out above the din, drawing men aside like stiff grass before wind. Suddenly the king loomed, armor polished but aged, the crowned stag upon his breastplate scratched and pitted. Even through the scent of pitch and sweat, Jaime caught the sour tang of wine on his breath. Yet Robert's gaze was clear, focused. "Your Grace." Jaime knelt stiffly. "Up, sir. No time for courtesies." Robert studied the pot cradled in Jaime's hands. "And this devil's nectar, Tyrion swears it'll bring down the very 7 hells on our enemies, but I've scarce trust in Mummer's tricks." Jaime shrugged. "If it works, we'll toast the dwarf for once." Robert grunted. "If it doesn't, you'll pour it over my pyre." The king's eyes drifted skyward. "She comes tonight. I feel it." Jaime felt it too. Air taut as a bowstring, the city holding its breath. The silver moon hung high when Salador San's swiftest caravel cut silently through the mouth of the Blackwater, sails furled, oars dipping without splash. Upon its prow crouched a sail sail with a spyglass, eyes shining. "Fires on the river," he whispered down to his captain. "But no sails aflame. They're waiting." Salador grinned in the gloom. "Let them wait. A queen's patience is deeper than any river." He thought of the fortune pledged for his loyalty. Dragonfire or no, he intended to survive to spend it. Yet as the first distant roar echoed across the water, the Lyseni's grin faltered. Cersei Lannister stood on a balcony overlooking the dry moat of Maegor's Holdfast, skin prickling beneath velvet. Far across the city sky something glowed, a pulsating fiery ribbon. At its heart shimmered a sigil of terror, the silhouette of wings wider than the sept's rose window, eyes like molten gold, jaws coughing a torrent of orange that reflected in every slack jaw of the crowd below. Small folk shrieked prayers and curses, some dropping to knees, others fleeing as though doom itself gave chase. "It is only one," she whispered, though to whom she did not know. Maester Pycelle lurched beside her, trembling so fiercely his chains rattled. "One is sufficient, your grace." Cersei's nails dug half-moons into the stone railing. She forced herself to watch, to memorize the beast's every movement. How its tail whipped, how its wings cupped the wind, how the fire jetted forth in sudden, violent gouts. To conquer fear, one must know it. She had long ago mastered the fear of men. Dragons were merely another enemy. In the streets, gold cloaks shoved commoners aside, herding them toward the inner gates. Panic was spreading faster than wildfire. She tasted it, metallic, exhilarating. Fear made subjects pliable. Should Robert fall tonight, the 7 kingdoms would need a queen strong enough to command ashes. On the river itself, chaos bloomed. Regal Dove first, green wings folding tight as he split the air, talons raking across the deck of a Baratheon war galley and sending men spinning into black water. They resurfaced screaming, until the green dragon's breath set the river alight, turning cries into steamed silence. Wildfire erupted below decks, devouring hull and flesh alike, and the ship became a floating pyre. Cannons of scorpion bolts hissed upward in desperate retort. Many clattered off scaled armor. A handful found soft flesh between plates, eliciting bellowing shrieks that shook tar from rigging and fear from men's bowels. From the city walls Tyrion watched through slitted eyes, sweat trickling along his spine despite the chill. "Release!" he cried, and crews hauled flaming casks of wildfire over parapets, lofting them on oversized trebuchets. The first jar burst in a lurid emerald blossom beside Drogon's wing, the heat of it so fierce even atop the wall Tyrion felt his eyebrows singe. The dragon roared and veered, flame meeting flame in a war of alchemical fury. Below, rowers screamed as green fire spilled across river and deck alike, burning on water, on flesh, on air. A horror beyond rational script. Yet each blast drove Drogon higher, away from the densest clusters of ships. For a heartbeat Tyrion dared believe. Then the second dragon came. Viserion streaked from cloud cover like a falling star. His pale furnace engulfed a cluster of floating scorpions lashed together atop a barge. Within a breath, the barge vanished beneath fire-slick waves. The white-gold beast banked, searing a swath along the riverbank where archers had massed. Screams rolled up the stone in stuttering waves.
Tyrion tasted bile.
A horn sounded, deep, booming, primal. Robert Baratheon emerged through smoke aboard his flagship Fury, hammer raised, stag helm glinting with malevolent glee. He bellowed something lost to distance but felt in the marrow of every soldier. A challenge, a promise, a death-defying roar that named him king of this horror. Men rallied, oars biting water. Ships pivoted toward the nearest dragon. Banks of scorpions reloaded. Deckhands swathed heads and arms in wet cloth to ward embers. Robert leapt from prow to forecastle with the nimbleness of a man half his girth, swinging his hammer to direct crews. Here, tighten the chain. There, bring up the bolt rack. Wildfire snapped and popped around him. A hellish storm made flesh, yet he seemed at home amid ruin, eyes blazing like the forges of Hephaestus. From her vantage on Drogon's back, Daenerys spied the stag-crowned warrior. She knew him instantly, though he was thicker, older, hair more salt than coal. Yet the hammer told all. The usurper, her birthright's thief. Heat pulsed behind her teeth as she commanded Drogon into a dive. Fury's deck lurched sideways. Sailors threw themselves flat as a shadow eclipsed moon. Robert alone stood unmoved, bracing his boots wide, raising the warhammer two-handed. When Drogon's jaws parted, Robert hurled a spear of iron pitched with wildfire. Flung it like a javelin, the shaft spinning end over end to strike the dragon's armored chest. The spear shattered, but shards of flaming resin clung to black scales, sizzling. Drogon shrieked, wings flapping wildly. In that moment of distraction, a scorpion bolt flew, punching through the thin membrane beneath his right wing joint. Blood as dark as midnight sprayed across sky. Daenerys clung to horn ridges, teeth rattling. Drogon faltered, listing. Another bolt whistled past. She yanked hard on the reins of thought and soul that bound them. The dragon banked away, struggling for altitude. Yet the retreat came too slow. Robert roared and signaled anew. Two more ships heaved lines, dragging a submerged chain of black iron links to the surface, glistening wet and slick with pitch. The links rose between prow horns, then snapped taut across the river mouth like a noose. Drogon's damaged wing clipped it. Metal clanged against scale, sparks erupted. The chain held. Drogon tumbled. Daenerys felt the world spin, wind screaming by, the Blackwater rushing up with hungry jaws. A heartbeat separated her from annihilation. At the last instant, Drogon's wings caught air. He righted, soaring seawards, but blood dripped freely from the wound. The dragons converged around their brother, hemming him in a protective V, before retreating toward the bay's open mouth beyond range of scorpions. On the wall, men cheered. On the river, men wept. Victory had never seemed so near or so fragile. Hours passed in brutal increments measured by screams and the wet slap of burning bodies against hulls. Dawn's gray light peeled back smoke to reveal a graveyard. Broken masts jutting like snapped spears, half-sunken hulks belching green flame, a boil of corpses turning the river crimson and black. Yet the city still stood, its walls scorched but unbreached. Robert Baratheon dismounted the ramp of his ship, boots splashing in ankle-deep soot-slicked water. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion. His hammer, now notched, dragged furrows through sand as he walked. But his eyes remained alive, feral. Tyrion hobbled across rubble to meet him. "The dragons withdrew," the dwarf reported, voice rasping. "Your chain crippled one. A fine trick." Robert spat blood-tinged phlegm. "Aye, a trick. But they'll return once she licks her wounds." He glanced toward the ragged horizon where dawn painted the sky like a bruise. "We must count how many ships float, how many bolts remain, and how many kings." Tyrion raised an eyebrow toward Stannis, who disembarked another galley nearby, face pinched with calculation. Robert grunted. "One king is enough for now." He trudged on. Above the city, ravens burst from every rookery, black wings blotting sunrise. Missives flew to Highgarden, to Riverrun, to Winterfell, to Dorne, dragons at Blackwater. King stands. On a bluff south of the river, Daenerys watched sunrise burn away night's terror. Jorah stood beside her, face smudged with soot, eyes glistening. Drogon lay coiled in the shallows, the wound in his wing sealed with a poultice concocted from dragon's blood and ground obsidian. The dragon slept fitfully, feverish heat steaming the water around him. Rhaegal and Viserion perched sentinel on rocky crags, occasionally trumpeting distress or agitation. "The city still stands," Jorah observed. "For now," she answered. In her mind, the face of the Stag King burned brighter than the flames that had lit the river. Those mad, glorious eyes meeting hers across chaos. Not fear as she expected, defiance. "We can strike again tonight," Jorah suggested. She shook her head. "Not tonight. I will not squander my children against chains and treachery. We will hunt their fleet in open water where scorpions cannot aim true." Her gaze drifted inland. "And when the river runs clean again, we will fly over walls and show them ire from within their dreams." Jorah bowed. "As you command." Yet command felt lighter than before, as though the king's hammer had split more than scale, split certainty itself. For the first time since Karth, Daenerys Targaryen tasted doubt. Not of her dragons, but of the long-scarred land she sought to rule, and of the storm-crowned warrior who defended it with the fury of a dying star. In the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, a lone prisoner listened to the reverberations of battle fade into uneasy quiet. Maester Qyburn's ravens croaked secrets beyond his cell door. The captive smiled, a thin slit of a smile carved into shadow. War, he mused, made opportunities of men's ambitions. And tonight, ambition soared on wings of fire. Outside, the first carrion crows circled above smoldering masts. The Battle of the Blackwater had not ended. It had only begun a new chapter, written in the blood of dragons and the roar of a king who refused to die. And in that uncertain pause between carnage and reckoning, Westeros held its breath. Smoke drifted across the throne room like whispering wraiths as Robert Baratheon sank upon the Iron Throne. Steel bit into flesh. A cut opened on his left thigh, warm blood soaking wool. He barely noticed. His mind replayed the moment Drogon's eyes met his, the raw hatred, the ancient intelligence. Not the gaze of a beast, but of an enemy. He had faced many foes in his life. Rhaegar's calm resignation, Balon Greyjoy's sullen arrogance, countless Sellsword's hollow bravado. But never had he faced living myth. The weight of it settled upon his broad shoulders, and for the first time since the rebellion Robert grasped the fragile wire between legend and doom. His council awaited pronouncement. Stannis stiff as granite, Renly absent, no doubt comforting some terrified lordling's wife, Tyrion nursing burnt fingers, Varys silent, Littlefinger smirking as always beneath feathered cap. "We hold," Robert declared, voice ragged yet ironclad. "We mend ships, fetch every smith from here to Duskendale to forge more scorpions, and we train every lad who can piss standing up to pull a bowstring." He leaned forward so the throne spikes framed him like an iron halo. "The dragon lass thinks to break us in a night. She'll find we are the storm that never ends." Around him, advisors exchanged wary glances. Stannis gave the smallest nod, more approval than Robert had received in years. Tyrion allowed himself a weary smile. "And when she returns?" Littlefinger asked softly. Robert's eyes flared. When she returns, we'll greet her with iron and fury, and perhaps a whisper of something more. He motioned to a hooded figure lurking behind the dais. Qyburn stepped forward, pale eyes gleaming, carrying a small iron chest chained and locked. Within, rumor promised, was a weapon born of sorcery long forbidden. Robert rested a scarred hand atop the lid. Let the girl bring her dragons. I have forged a dragon's bane. In the hush that followed, the Iron Throne seemed almost to hum, as if the swords of slain kings sensed the sharpening of destiny. Far to the east of the Blackwater, upon a lonely stretch of coast where driftwood gathered like corpses, Daenerys Targaryen knelt beside Drogon's resting shape. She stroked his soot-stained neck, whispering lullabies in Valyrian. The dragon's great eye cracked open, a slit of molten gold, resting upon his mother. "So Veets," she murmured. "Rest." Behind her, Rhaegal lifted his head at the horizon's reddening glow, and Viserion answered with a piercing cry. Daenerys followed their gaze. Dawn's second light shimmered upon the capital's walls, and in that fiery glow the Red Keep looked aflame though whole. She vowed to change that, but not with haste, with patience deeper than the sea, with strategy older than Valyria. Robert Baratheon had survived a dance with dragons. The next dance would be her choosing, one where chains could not bind and scorpions could not reach. And when the dance ended, the stag would bow to the dragon, its crown melted into nothing but slag. She rose, cloak snapping, and gave command to her captains. "We sail north," for beyond Blackwater Bay lay a coastline unguarded, villages that supplied King's Landing, fields of grain that fed its people. Burn the food, starve the city, draw the king out from his walls. Dragons were more than weapons. They were siege engines of the sky. And so the tides shifted again, carrying fire and iron, hope and dread, toward another dawn none could yet imagine. Thus ended the first night of the second dance, leaving flames smoldering, dreams shattered, and legends reborn. In the charred silence, a storm whispered across Westeros, heralding days when gods and men alike would tremble, and the true cost of survival would be weighed in dragonfire and the thunder of a king's hammer. The story had only begun. The morning after the pyres on the river had burned themselves into lumps of green-flecked charcoal, King's Landing awoke bruised and jittering. Carts creaked through the city gates from the Crownlands, bearing cabbages that smelled faintly of smoke, onions with blackened skins, and nervous farmers who rubbed ash from their eyelids as though trying to rub away memory. The bells of the Great September told a measured cadence for the dead found tangled in the nets below Mud Gate. Men who had never set foot upon a ship yet somehow died sailors' deaths, fingers blistered from hauling lines that snapped under dragonfire. Septons muttered prayers, Septas wove wreaths of pale roses, and still the scent of wildfire clung to every breeze, stubborn as sin. High atop the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion Lannister leaned over the balustrade with parchment in one hand and a goblet of watered wine in the other. Fleas hopped about the lintel stones as if mistaking them for patchy dogs. Below, the thrumming bustle of charwomen scrubbing blood from the courtyard mosaic rose in faint counterpoint to the distant chanting from the September life persisted. He thought, the way weeds forced their way through mortar. Yet life could be snapped as easily as those weeds if Daenerys Targaryen returned before the city mended its many fractures. I count 4 shipwrights, 6 master smiths, and 16 carpenters from Stokeworth alone, Bronn reported behind him, slouching against a lintel with the casual grace of a cat that had discovered mice too terrified to flee. They all claim the king's coin flows truer than any Stormlander duke's promissory note. Tyrion raised the parchment. Promises of wine from the arbor sweeten every contract. Nothing like a cask of gold-dappled summer wine to make a man risk burning alive. He took a sip and grimaced. Even watered, the wine tasted of smoke. See that they sign before they glimpse the river. Once they spy that graveyard, their courage will swim away faster than Littlefinger's silver. Bronn scratched his jaw. And if the dragons torch the docks again before the quills are dry? Then see they sign in blood, Tyrion muttered. Easier to clean than ink in this place. A flutter of wings interrupted. Ravens circled and one descended to perch on the railing beside Tyrion, cocking a beady black eye. It wore no message tube, just a bit of scarlet twine knotted about its leg. A warning from Varys, perhaps, or a jest. Tyrion shooed it. The bird croaked, flapped once, and took flight toward the east where smoke still smeared the sky. Ugly omen, Bronn observed, watching it vanish. If we refused every omen with an ugly face, we'd never leave our beds, Tyrion replied. He turned, eyes narrowing. How many cells words answered the call? Enough to fill a brothel on a feast day. Not enough to stand a wall against dragonfire. Bronn shrugged. Fighting men know when the odds are a rigged dice. Then we must weight the dice. Tyrion folded the parchment. Tell the guilds their indulgences will double if they remain a fortnight, and pay each cell's word half up front and half when the dragons lie dead. Greed sharpens courage. Dead dragons, eh? Bronn chuckled. I'll need a bigger purse for that bet. He pushed off the wall and sauntered out, boots echoing. Alone now, Tyrion stared once more at the horizon. The air trembled there, a heat-shimmer mirage though the day remained cool. He wondered whether Drogon's wound festered or healed, wondered if Daenerys nursed wrath or caution, wondered if King Robert's chest could bear one more night without rest. He felt very small in that moment, no larger than the fleas beneath his elbows. Far to the north of the city, a column of smoke the shape of a twisted spear rose from a plain of withered barley. Villages that once sent cartloads of milled flour to King's Landing now lay gutted. Timbers collapsed inward, walls smeared with sooty streaks where fire had kissed stone. Sheep roasted in their pens, eyes glassy and legs rigid as stakes. Over all drifted tiny motes of black that settled like new snow upon crisp thatch. Daenerys stood at the edge of a field, Drogon low on his belly behind her. The great beast's blasted wings still bore a fresh scab as large as a wagon wheel, but he flexed it now, testing span and sinew. Every stretch set the scab cracking, revealing crimson underflesh. Steam hissed between his teeth, and each exhale sent sparks dancing across stubble that once grew ripe barley. We burn their bread, they burn in hunger, she said quietly. Winter does half the work, Ser Jorah replied, wiping sweat from his brow. Autumn is near. Without grain stores, the capital will know famine before frost. Famine breeds rebellion, she said, and rebellion opens gates. Nearby, Regal rose on hind legs, beating wings once, twice, casting eddies that toppled fence posts left standing. Viserion perched upon a toppled granary roof, tail lazily shattering sun-bleached tiles. Both younger dragons smelled the killing fields too keenly. Their restlessness crackled like lightning between them. Yet Daenerys would not loose them further, not yet. Control came first. She would win the war by increments, not mad charges. Else Drogon's wounded wing would join him crippled on some bank while her enemies celebrated. A flock of crows circled overhead, cawing with greedy anticipation. Daenerys felt the tremor beneath her ribs that presaged memory. Cartha's warlocks chanting, Astapor's slavers begging, Myreen's decree of chains broken. Those foes had seemed unstoppable until she found the seam and pulled. Robert Baratheon would be no different. We march at dusk, she said. The next village lies 2 leagues east. Let them watch smoke columns draw nearer day by day. Jorah inclined his head. I will send riders to scout the roads and burn every storehouse they pass. No, Daenerys said. Spare the storehouses. Let them see us spare. And when the people flee to King's Landing, let them speak of a queen who could scorch them yet chose mercy. She touched Drogon's neck, scales hot even to her calloused palm. Mercy shown willingly wields more terror than cruelty expected. Jorah's brows furrowed in thought. He bowed and left to spread orders among the captains. Alone, Daenerys closed her eyes and breathed the acrid scent of charred barley. Her heart thrummed to the rhythm of distant bells she imagined would ring once the city finally surrendered. Bells tolling a queen's return rather than mourning a king's defeat. But she would not rush that music. It must crescendo at the perfect moment lest the song end half-sung. In the great September of Baelor, Queen Cersei knelt before a marble effigy of the mother, her green silks pooling on white tiles like spilled meadow grass. Candles flickered, throwing gold-laced light upon her high cheekbones. Though she clasped hands in prayer, her gaze remained fixed not on the statue's tender smile, but on the sunlight slanting through stained glass windows. Dragons and direwolves danced in colored fragments across the floor, ancient enemies locked forever in trembling hues. A soft scrape of boot leather alerted her. She did not turn. "Speak." Qyburn emerged from the shadows, head bowed. "Your Grace, the captive is prepared." Cersei rose. The mother's smile looked naive from this height, as if plastered onto the stone by some fool who had never tasted loss. Cersei touched the effigy's cold cheek with 2 fingers, then withdrew. "Take me to him." Down winding stairs slick with incense residue they descended, into catacombs where the air chilled the bone. At the final iron-barred door, Qyburn produced a ring of keys. He chose one barbed and black. The lock clicked like a snapping insect. The door hissed open. The cell beyond glimmered green. Wildfire burned within a thick-walled glass cauldron etched with glyphs. The liquid emitted no smoke, but its glow danced across chains hammered into the walls. In those chains knelt a man gagged, lean but corded with muscle, brown hair matted to his scalp by sweat. His eyes burned hotter than the flames. Cersei ventured 3 steps inside. "Ser Loras," she said softly. The night of flowers glared. Chains clinked as he shifted, testing shackles that dug into flesh red raw. Qyburn removed the gag. Loras spat blood. "I owe you nothing, Queen." "You owe me everything," Cersei murmured. "Your oath-bound king shelters behind my walls. Your sister dwells under my protection. I could use you to bargain with the Tyrells, but that would be commonplace." Loras' lip curled. "Then kill me." "No," she paced. "I will forge you." She looked to Qyburn. The former maester inclined his head and lifted a small dagger glowing faintly green along its edge. The blade dripped an elixir distilled from wildfire, tempered with quicksilver and stranger essences cordoned by secrecy. Cersei watched Loras' eyes flick to the blade, fear brightening like morning on snow. "You will ride in the vanguard," she said. "A knight risen from flame. Your blade will cut dragons." She nodded to Qyburn, who drew another object from beneath his robe. A spear tipped black as moonless sea, barbed like a manticore's stinger, edges etched with glyphs matching those on the cauldron. Loras barked a laugh. "Dragon glass? You truly think children's tales will save your throne? Ours is not dragon glass." Cersei's voice softened to a purr. "It is dragon death, cast from Maegor's own furnaces before Valyrian steel fell silent. An alloy lost until my alchemists unearthed it from beneath these very vaults. You will wield it." Loras' gaze hardened to granite. "I will see your city burn first." Cersei advanced, shadows sliding across her cheek as though she wore a living mask. "And if the city burns, so does Queen Marjorie. So does your sweet brother Garland, who rides to reinforce us. Do you think Dragonfire knows friend from foe?" She held his gaze until the fight flickered, just a heartbeat. She felt that yield like a knot loosening in silk. "Swear and they are spared. Refuse, and dragons will feast on their ashes." Silence stretched, taut as drawn silk. At last Loras bowed his head. The chains clattered in what might have been resignation or despair. Qyburn smiled thinly. Jaime Lannister rode north along the Rose Road with a column of 400 gold cloaks and twice as many Stormlander levies. The air smelled of crushed grass and nervous horses. Each league left behind another smoking farmhouse or abandoned hamlet, testament to the dragon's creeping terror. Ravens beat them overhead, lazy black splotches drifting toward King's Landing with news of burned barns and flocks of refugees clogging the highways. At a crossroads, commandeered as billet Jaime dismounted. His mare snorted, sidestepping refuse that littered the yard. Broken toys, a child's shoe, a lamb gutted by fear or hunger. Every pivot of hoof threatened to slip on mud slick with ash. Inside the common room, a brazier glowed futilely, its modest heat devoured by drafty shutters. Soldiers dozed on benches, helms pillowed against tankards. The stink of unwashed men coated the air. Jaime found the innkeep counting chipped pewter cups in a corner. "Food. Only oats and turnips, sire," the woman said, eyes darting to his golden armor. "The rest left with the last wagon for the city." Jaime's stomach groaned. He had not tasted meat in 2 days. "Boil the oats in ale," he said. "Tell the men to share." He tossed her a silver stag minted long ago with Robert's smiling visage. Funny how the coin looked younger than its owner. He moved to an empty table. Maps lay rolled tight in a leather tube. He unfurled them, smoothing corners. The dragon's burn line carved a jagged path across the fertile mantle of the Crownlands, edging ever nearer the Rose Road. Soon they would reach the market town of Duskendale. Afterward, only 20 miles separated them from the capital's main granaries at the Darkwash River. If Daenerys seized those silos, King's Landing would starve before winter's first frost. A stool scraped. Lord Stannis dropped onto it, gauntlet hands clasped. He had arrived an hour earlier with 36 Baratheon household knights, their stags painted over with fresh tar to hide dents from dragonfire. Stannis studied the map, lips thinning. "We need the fleet," Jaime said. "There is scarcely a fleet left," Stannis replied. "Half lies sunk, the other half leaks." He tapped a gauntlet on a village icon where smoke curls marked destruction. "If we ride west, we might catch the Targaryen host fording the Wendwater. If we ride west with our paltry numbers, she will roast us like suckling pigs." Stannis' jaw ticked. "Then we lure her inland." "A woman with wings cannot be herded like sheep," Jaime retorted. "Dragons have hearts." Stannis' eyes glittered like chips of flint. "We break one, the others bleed grief. She flies to protect them, we strike elsewhere." Jaime considered. "Drogon's wound. You would bait the wounded dragon. I would bait victory." Stannis rose. "Send scouts to find the crippled beast. Robert need only land one hammer blow." He stalked away before Jaime could object. Jaime exhaled, knuckles white around map edges. He wondered when Baratheons had become men of schemes rather than axes. The world turned upside down when dragons breathed again. That evening, Robert Baratheon stood atop the Gate of the Gods, looking north across the King's Road where thousands of refugees trudged between mileposts worn smooth by centuries. Mothers barefooted, babes silent with hunger, fathers towing crates of cabbages half blackened by smoke, children with eyes too old. Songs of despair drifted like dust. Only 2 verses repeated. "The Dragon Queen is mercy and the Dragon Queen is death." Robert's chest twisted. A figure climbed to the parapet beside him. Renly, armor polished to mirror shine, green cloak pinned with golden rose gifted by Marjorie. The younger Baratheons scanned the refugees. "The city swells hourly," he said. "The granaries shrink twice as fast." Robert grunted. "The city survived Maegor. It will survive a barefoot queen and her pets. Pets that breathe flame." Robert's hand tightened on the parapet's edge until stone bit skin. "They bleed like any beast," he said. "I saw it yesterday. Give me one clean shot and I'll shatter its skull." Renly rested a gentle hand on his brother's pauldron. "Brother, the wound still aches." He indicated Robert's belt where a flask hung half concealed. "Ease the pain, but not so deep you cannot think. Pain reminds me I live." Robert pushed Renly's hand away. "Fetch Lord Selmy. The old knight has marched beneath dragon shadow before." A sour laugh. "He may even recall which prayer quiets fear." Renly hesitated, lips parted as if to argue. Then he bowed and withdrew. Robert remained, watching columns of dusk light filter through smoke, painting halos about the weary heads of small folk. In those halos he saw ghosts. Ned Stark riding to war, Lyanna's half-smile in winter sunshine, Rhaegar's rubies spinning beneath water the color of sorrow, Robert's own past self howling victory beneath a banner of storm. All dead or fading. Only the hammer remained, a heavy promise across his back. 3 days later, word came by Raven. A dragon with mangled wing roosted at Oldstones, the ruins where Jenny of Oldstones had once danced with her ghosts. Robert assembled a vanguard before dawn, knights of the Kingsguard, Tyrell riders anxious to prove themselves, Stormlander infantry hardened by Greyjoy raids, and a handful of wild-eyed alchemists escorting wagons bearing iron-bound crates that glowed faintly green in their gaps. Jaime greeted the king as he mounted. Scouts say the creature hunts alone. Its rider nurses villagers for information. Then we'll offer knowledge in steel, Robert said, swinging onto a warhorse the color of ash. The animal snorted and danced beneath its burden but did not shy. Warhorses bred in the Stormlands carried lightning in their veins. Robert patted its neck. Ready the scorpions. The march north felt like marching into an old ballad. Rolling hills, ruined sepulchres crowned with moss, mornings cool enough to taste frost on the grass. Memories of the rebellion haunted Robert, each mile echoing old songs of glory. Yet this time Ned's laughter did not ride at his side. Only the hollow clop of hooves and the muffled rattle of wildfire crates. At midday of the second day, the sky darkened with wheeling carrion. Robert's column slowed. Scouts returned at gallop, breath pluming. "The beast lairs on the hill," a freckled youth gasped, pointing to a jagged crown of stone half a league ahead. "It guards nothing but broken walls." Robert squinted. He saw no silhouettes, smelled no smoke. He felt only a tightening in his gut, half hunger, half anticipation. "Form the line," he commanded. Shields interlocked. Scorpions trundled forward, their oxen lowing. Alchemists scurried among wagons, loading bolts tips with wildfire vials strapped to iron barbs. Jaime slid from saddle to direct a pair of sappers carrying a collapsible mantlet. Dust hung in the warm air. The first roar shattered silence like an axe through glass. Wind gusted, swirling the dust into wraith forms that danced across the grass. A shadow spilled over the vanguard, huge, ragged. Drogon. Jaime's heart hammered. The dragon's right wing beat unevenly, the punctured membrane sewn crudely with cord. Yet the beast remained vast, its head alone longer than 2 carriages end to end. It circled twice, smoke funneling from nostrils. Golden eyes fixed upon Robert's bright antlered helm. Recognition, Jaime thought. Hatred weaponized. Robert roared back, raising the hammer overhead. "Now!"
Scorpion sang.
Thick bolts streaked skyward, trailing green hissing vapor. Drogon banked. One bolt skimmed his thigh, exploding in emerald conflagration. Flame kissed scale. The dragon shrieked, stumbling mid-air, but did not fall. Another bolt struck true, burying in the wing joint already wounded. Green fire burst across the joint, licking into the old scab, reigniting agony. Drogon's wings flailed. The creature plummeted, landing behind the hill with an impact that buckled trees. Robert spurred forward, followed by a wedge of 20 mounted knights. Jaime cursed and followed, though every instinct screamed caution. As they crested, the rise smoke rolled back, hot as a smithy. The dragon writhed in a shallow vale, tail smashing stonework into powder. Its eyes burned not with fear but wrath. Each struggled breath jetted fire that incinerated shrubs in a half-circle. Splatters of green still clung to torn scales, burning strangely cold to the touch of sunlight. "Loose!" Robert bellowed. Another volley of wildfire-tipped corals rained. Many bounced harmlessly. A few dug into wounded flesh, renewing emerald flares. Drogon's roar cracked Jaime's eardrums. It sounded less like pain than challenge. A smaller figure streaked from the ruined tower. Daenerys herself, hair unbound, cloak snapping. She sprinted across broken ground toward her dragon as scorpion bolts sizzled overhead. Robert saw her. He kicked his horse. "Your Grace!" Jaime shouted, spurring to overtake, but Robert was already thundering down the slope, hammer raised. Daenerys reached Drogon's head. She pressed a hand to his snout, whispering words Jaime could not hear. Drogon's pupils slit on her. Fire licked at his fangs. Robert closed within 30 yards. Drogon's leaking wing might never bear him aloft again, but his neck arched with deadly grace. Flame erupted, a cone of orange hotter than a forge. Robert's horse reared, front half swallowed by fire. The animal shrieked, collapsing beneath him. Robert rolled clear, shoulder striking granite. His cloak ignited. He ripped it free, hammer still clutched. Daenerys mounted Drogon's foreleg, clambering toward his shoulder. Robert scrambled up, char streaking his greaves. He heaved the warhammer, aiming for the dragon's eye. A shape barreled into him, Ser Loras, resplendent in newly forged silver full-plate chased with vines. He parried Robert's strike with a shield hammered from that dark alloy Qyburn had boasted. Sparks leapt. Loras shoved, forcing Robert back astride. The king's eyes widened at the unfamiliar opponent in Tyrell filigree. "Step aside, boy," Robert growled. "No," Loras answered, voice muffled by helm. "Not for kingdoms." Robert swung, hammer ringing against shield.
Loras spun, spar flashing.
The tip grazed Robert's pauldron, slicing leather straps but not flesh. Robert laughed, then coughed, smoke clawing lungs raw. He lunged, hammerhead hooking Loras' shield, wrenching it aside. With the same movement, he drove his mailed fist into the knight's visor grill. Metal dented. Loras staggered. Jaime reached them as Daenerys urged Drogon to rise. The dragon levered onto forelimbs, battered wing drooping, but still managed a half-bound lunge that placed 10 yards between confrontation and escape route. Flame roiled in his throat. Jaime interposed horse and shield. "Your grace, fall back. Scorpions." Robert ignored him, stepping toward Loras again. Suddenly the knight cast aside helm and shield both, revealing sweat-slick hair and eyes shining with half-mad devotion. He thrust the spear overhand. Robert swung. The warhammer met the spear haft mid-swing. The unknown dark metal did not shatter. Instead it hurled the hammer's head wide with a ringing clang that numbed Robert's arms. Loras pressed forward, spear aiming for Robert's heart. Jaime spurred between them, parrying with his long sword. The spear glanced, tip screeching along steel. "Fool!" Robert roared at Jaime. "I had him." "He's enchanted," Jaime spat. "That spear resists everything." Drogon roared again, louder. Pain and fury and protective rage for his mother. Jaime glimpsed Daenerys clinging to spines along his torn shoulder. She shouted Valyrian. Drogon's jaws widened. "Down!" Jaime shoved Robert. Both Kingslayer and King dropped as a sheet of fire whooshed overhead, painting the veil in molten gold. Loras' spear glowed red-hot. The knight fell, armor smoking. Smoke blinded Jaime. Heat slammed him like a mailed fist. From the hillside scorpions released another volley. Quarrels cut through smoke like shrieking ghosts. One struck Drogon's chest, burying to the fletching. Wildfire burst, enveloping the dragon's upper torso in venomous green. Drogon screamed. His wings seized. Stone cracked under his thrash. Daenerys screamed, too wordless, heart-rending. She leapt down, landing on scorched soil, fumbling at the bolt shaft to pull it free. Wildfire licked her palms. She felt no burn, as though grief numbed nerve endings. Drogon's blood hissed where emerald mixed with crimson. Robert regained his feet, hammer again ready. He saw her crouched, vulnerable, hair haloed by flames that did not touch her. For a heartbeat pity flashed, the memory of Lyanna's tears on tourney of Harrenhal mornings. Then he roared and charged. Jaime cursed and followed. The two warriors converged upon the queen. At the last instant Daenerys ripped the bolt free. Wildfire gushed, splattering her arms without consuming them. Some madness of Valyrian blood or dragon magic spared her. She pivoted, bolt in hand, presenting it like a lance. Robert swung. She ducked beneath. Jaime darted left, feinting to draw her attention. Instead she thrust the wildfire-drenched spear at Drogon's wound, igniting the oozing blood into sheets of green flame that cascaded down his scales. The dragon's convulsion sent tail whipping. Robert flew backward, crashing against a broken wall. Jaime slid beneath the tail's arc by a hair's breadth, helm torn away. Drogon collapsed sideways, dust geysered. Daenerys tumbled clear, coughing, face blackened. She sprawled mere feet from Robert, who struggled to stand, hammer lost in rubble. They locked eyes, so close each saw the other's pupils tremble. Robert heaved a breath that rasped like rust. "Girl," he croaked. "Usurper," she hissed, voice raw. He groped for dagger at his belt. It was gone, jarred loose. She raised the broken bolt, tip blazing eerie green. Behind them Drogon's head sagged. Great eyelids fluttered weakly. Silence settled so heavy Jaime feared it might crush them all. Then hoofbeats thundered. Stannis' detachment charged over the ridge, pennants snapping. At their forefront galloped Ser Davos Seaworth, bellowing commands. Bows loosed arrows. Daenerys glanced back. Flight impossible. Rhaegal's roar echoed far off. Viserion answered. Too distant. She dropped the bolt and flung up empty hands. A gesture not of surrender but defiance. "Strike then," she called to the oncoming cavalry. "And kill your king with me, for we stand as one breath apart." The riders hesitated, blades wavered. Robert staggered upright, blood smeared across cheekbone, one eye swelling shut. He raised both arms. "Hold!" His command split the charge in ragged halves. Horses reined, hooves churning dirt. Robert turned to Daenerys. "You want the realm? Take it." He reached into a pouch and withdrew an object glinting gold. The stag's sigil crown, dented, smeared with soot. With a ragged grunt, he cast it at her feet. "Win it the way dragons won it before, honorably in open war, not in this butcher's ditch." Jaime stared, mouth dry. Daenerys stared back, disbelief warring with contempt. Behind her Drogon exhaled one faint plume. She bent, touched the crown, lifted it. The metal scorched her palm. She hissed and let it fall again. "This crown was forged in rebellion," she said. "It shall melt in fire reborn." Robert's laugh came out broken. "Then melt it, but do not call me craven for meeting you face to face." He limped forward 2 steps and collapsed to one knee, too weary to hide it. "Go, tend your monster, spare these lands. We will meet again, at a place of your choosing." A hush spread over the vale as though sun itself paused. Queen and king, knee-deep in ash and smoke, offered one another a reprieve only fate could justify. Daenerys backed away, never lowering her gaze. She reached Drogon's head, stroked the soot-black cheek. The dragon stirred, great heartbeat reverberating through the earth. Slowly, painfully, he pushed upright to one elbow. His torn wing drooped like a rag of night. Yet he lived. Daenerys climbed. Drogon lurched to all fours, molten blood dripping. With a bound that shook mountains, he half leapt, half flew, clearing the ridge. His flight path listed, but his shadow still dwarfed every man beneath. Silence persisted until long after the silhouette shrank to a smudge against eastern clouds. Then Stannis dismounted, marched to Robert, offered arm. Robert ignored it, pushing himself upright. Jaime retrieved the abandoned crown. He turned it over. The stag's antlers snapped in half where hammer blow had bent them the day Ned Stark had died. Now soot caked the broken spires like funeral garb.
Robert met Jaime's case.
"We teach her fear," he rasped. "Next time we teach her death." He took the crown and shoved it in his belt. Jaime surveyed the carnage. Loras Tyrell lay unmoving, armor fused to flesh by dragonfire. Qyburn's black spear glowed faintly, half melted. Sappers doused burning brush with buckets of dirt. All for a stalemate. Yet somewhere within Jaime a new understanding smoldered. Dragons could bleed. Kings could falter. And the realm's fate was no longer a ballad but a question posed to gods and men alike. That night, Daenerys made camp by the rush where reeds whispered ancient lullabies. Healers daubed Drogon's wounds with salves of abyssal smell. Rhaegal coiled protectively, eyes scanning sky. Viserion circled overhead, keening mournful songs. The queen stared into a brazier, turning Robert's words again and again like stones in a river until edges wore smooth. She recalled the moment his hammer struck air near her head, felt wind from the swing, heat of wildfire on skin miraculously unscarred. She remembered the weight of the stag crown searing her palm, a brand from a world she meant to reorder. Yet Robert's audacity rattled her. He had confronted myth with mortal iron, and myth had not yet prevailed. Yora approached, My queen, the Dothraki wish to ride at dawn. They clamor to spill blood for your wounded son. She shook her head slowly. Not yet. The dragon must heal. The storm must gather. Her eyes lifted to the night sky. We will cross the Trident at the Ferry of the Twins. Rally riverlords who groan beneath Lannister debts. We will show them Robert's kingdom burns its own fields. And when the rivers rise and his people starve behind stone, they will open the gates for us. Yorenel's voice hushed. And if Robert strikes first? Then we bait him south, as he baited me north. The game is not over. It has scarcely begun. She stood, shoulders squaring. Ready the banners. The three-headed dragon above the direwolf, the lion, and the rose. I will show this realm a power forged from enemies united against one tyrant who survives only by setting them apart. Yora frowned. Your grace? Unite with lions? Not with lions in golden chains, she said. With lions in chains of honor. Her mind conjured Tyrion's sharp eyes, Jaime's rare decency in war, even Cersei's ruthless devotion. All pieces on a board. All could be turned. All must be. She walked to Drogon. The dragon's eye opened, weary embers beneath a lid of bruised crimson. She pressed her brow to his. In Valyrian, she whispered, I will not fail you. The dragon exhaled, smoke curling into the sky where stars blinked cold approval. Thus the board reset. Kings nursed bruises, queens plotted rivers of flame, and common folk trembled between. On winds scented of ash and salt, ravens carried word of a truce born in fire, an impossible moment when conqueror and pretender spared each other among ruins. Most called it madness, yet the wise smelled omen. Storm and shadow colliding to birth something neither could foresee. And the song continued, unrushed, gathering voices in dark refrain. In winters past, bards told tales of dragons that ravaged Westeros in a single night. This dance would be slower, a simmer, not a blaze. The simmer of pots left too long upon a hearth until water hissed away and iron cracked from within. When at last it cracked, the world would scald itself upon truth. That crowns are fragile, dragons are mortal, and storms may spend themselves against mountains only to return with tides that drown whole kingdoms. Beyond the rush, wolves howled, answering a moon veiled by smoke. Somewhere, a bard began composing a lay of the Battle of Oldstones, not yet finished, for the final chords were still shaping themselves in blood and embers. Across the sea, merchant princes listened to new rumor, that the Silver Queen and the Storm King had measured each other and found neither wanting. Coin shifted, ships readied, Sel's words sharpened blades. All waited. In the dungeons of King's Landing, Qyburn bent over a charred spear, murmuring to himself while green droplets sizzled on iron. Above, Cersei Lannister stared into her mirror, tracing the outline of her cheek where candlelight flickered, wondering if a queen could outshine a dragon in the end. Far north, a lone direwolf raised shaggy head toward the stars, sensing scales rustling on winds it would not feel for weeks. In the Eyrie, little Robert Arryn dreamed of distant thunder. At Winterfell, Sansa Stark read a raven scroll and felt the world tilt. And on Dragonstone, a smith hammered black iron into curves shaped like jaws, forging teeth for weapons yet unimagined. Each strike rang a note that echoed across seas and mountains, a promise that the next time fire kissed iron upon the Blackwater, the anvil itself would answer. The night drew on, vast and unsleeping, layering frost over fields still warm from flame. And somewhere inside that silence, time poised, balanced on the cusp of an era when dragons soared anew and kings remembered fear, when queens gambled kingdoms on the fragile flight of mercy, and when every breath taken beneath the seven heavens felt like the hush before a storm no maester's chronicle could adequately foretell. The story, relentless, pressed forward without titles or chapters, as boundless as the very sky it etched in smoke and star-born light. Rain whispered over the King's Road before dawn, a timid drizzle that turned dust to paste and dappled every banner drooping above the weary columns trudging south. Beneath a sagging leather awning, Jaime Lannister watched rivulets bead on his gauntlets and slide off the gold lions embossed there, tiny threads of water drawn irresistibly toward Earth's pull. Night lingered in the hollows of the land. Only the faintest gray blush kissed the horizon behind rolling clouds. Hammers rang somewhere ahead. Smiths at makeshift forges shoeing horses, straightening scorpion bolts, pouring molten lead into cracks that dragonfire had bubbled in iron plates. The scent of damp earth mingled with the ghost of ash, a reminder that the beast they hunted could be 20 leagues distant yet still mark the air with invisible brand. A sentry saluted. Jaime acknowledged him absently, thoughts drifting to Oldstones and the duel that had nearly rewritten history with one hammer swing. He had not slept since, not truly. Whenever he closed his eyes, he resaw the moment Daenerys Targaryen held Robert's crown in her hand, firelight gilding her knuckles while the stag's antlers sizzled her skin. She could have run him through then, ended a dynasty and a war in the same breath. Yet she had spared him, and he her. Why? Jaime's mind gnawed the riddle like a dog on marrow. "You look ill, sire." Brienne of Tarth ducked beneath the awning, rain glimmering on her copper hair. She carried a bowl of thin stew that steamed between them. "Eat." Jaime found a smile. "Gods, you still play squire." "Someone must," she said, pressing the bowl into his hand. "The men say the king rides at first light. He rides whether his arm can lift that cursed hammer or not." Jaime slurped. The stew was mostly barley, laced with a few slivers of something that might once have been rabbit. "Do you think him mad?" "No more than any warrior facing dragons." Brienne's eyes flicked toward distant tents where torches guttered. "Whatever else, he will stand between the realm and ruin." "You like him." "I respect courage." She hesitated, lowering her voice. "But courage can kill fools and heroes alike." Rain pattered on canvas overhead, steady and soft. "Sire, you have seen her, the queen. What manner of woman is she?" Jaime lowered the bowl. "Determined, younger than she deserves to be." There was grief in her and fury. "I half suspected she would spit fire without the dragon's aid." He recalled her eyes, violet, luminous. Yet she held her strike. "That frightens me more than her dragons." Brienne digested that in silence. Lightning flickered far off, illuminating cloud bellies. The night smelled of wet leaves and foreboding. Jaime finished the stew, handed back the bowl. "Thank you, my lady. See you pack your armor tight. A nervous smith hammered your breastplate thin at the shoulder. One good lance might split it. I will speak to the smith." She turned to leave, paused. "Remember what you are, Sir Jaime." "And what is that?" "A man who once saved a city of innocents from dragonfire." She met his gaze. "Do not forget how." She vanished into the shift-gray drizzle, footfalls soft on sodden earth. Jaime exhaled, surprised by the ache Brienne's words wakened. The past was a ghost that clung to his cloak. Sometimes it whispered shame, sometimes hope. Today he felt both. King Robert broke camp with thunder. Orders cracked down lines faster than the rain fell, and by sunrise the army crawled south toward the Brindlewood with a dull, endless rustle. Banners flapping heavy, wagon wheels squelching, hooves sucking free of mud. Robert rode at the fore with Renly and Stannis flanking him like mismatched pillars. Renly all bright smiles and emerald cloak despite the gloom. Stannis grim with a night blue plate etched only with a single fiery heart newly painted on his gorget. Jaime joined a half-pace behind, reins slack, mind mapping every ridge and hollow of the wooded country ahead. 2 leagues on, a courier in soaked leather panted up the column's flank and handed Tyrion Lannister, who rattled along in a curtained mule cart, a ribbon-sealed letter. The dwarf cracked wax, scanned, then poked his head from the flap and barked for Robert. The king wheeled his destrier. Squires scurried. Jaime drew near enough to overhear. "Word from King's Landing," Tyrion said, voice pitched under the rain's hush. "The Tyrell fleet has limped into Blackwater Bay. Lady Olenna vows 15 ships sound enough to sail." Robert's beard glistened with droplets. 15, he muttered, half scoff, half gratitude. Could be worse. Her ladyship also sends grain from the Reach.
Tyrion flicked wet parchment.
Enough for a moon's ration if the dragons burn no more fields. They'll burn Robert growled. "But tell the old rose I welcome the gift." He spurred forward again. The army rolled on. Mid-morning brought a wind from the east, sharp with brine and the faintest sulfuric prickle. Men coughed, glancing skyward. Rumors skittered, dragons aloft. But clouds roiled thick, veiling whatever might pass above. Jaime felt rather than heard the hush fall over ranks, a collective tightening of sinews, like a bowstring drawn and held. A horn sounded behind, scouts returning, for riders splashed through puddles, halting before Robert. Mud flecked their faces, eyes wild. The rush flooded. "Sire," one stammered. "Bridges taken at Hayford and Stonegate. Burned to char, small folk claim fire fell from the sky last night." Robert's lips thinned. "She means to hem us by water." Stannis studied a sodden map. "If the rush cannot be forded, our best route south is through Netley Ford here." He stabbed the parchment. "A bottleneck she might already watch." Renly offered a careless grin. "Then we sail past her nets. The Tyrell's ships wait at Blackwater. We ride for home, board, and strike behind her lines." "Coward's path," Stannis snapped. "We hold the field, not hide in holds." "Cowardice is often another word for prudence," Tyrion murmured, emerging from his cart to wring water from his sleeve. "Dragons find ships as easily as wheat fields, dear lords." Robert silenced them with a raised hand. "Enough. Our quarrel is choice of battle, not whether it comes. We move west, cross at Wendwater where the banks widen. If she follows, we choose the ground." Stannis saluted. Renly shrugged. Jaime felt tension ebb. At least they marched toward certainty, if not victory. 2 nights later, Daenerys Targaryen surveyed the sundered ruins of Maidenpool's outer wall. Rain had swept north since dawn, quenching embers that her riders left smoldering in palisades. But smoke still coiled from half-collapsed towers, and the stench of wet ash clung to every stone. No corpses littered the streets. She had spared lives where she could, letting townsfolk flee inland. Grain stores remained unburned, though soldiers broke open casks to distribute bread among her Dothraki outriders, who devoured crusts with animal relish. Drogon lay in the castle yard, wings splinted with boiled leather and iron stays hammered under Kohalo's supervision. The dragon dozed, breath shallow, each exhale a wisp of steam. Rhaegal kept watch from a crumbled turret, tail twitching whenever footfalls echoed too near. Viserion soared beyond ramparts, pale silhouette flickering between storm clouds and moonlit glints. Missandei approached, cloak billowing. "My queen, the maester begs to treat the wounded villagers. He asks safe conduct." "Grant it," Daenerys said, "and see the sick fed before my own guard." "It will be done." Daenerys paced the parapet. Her eyes traced the dark line of forest across the bay, imagining Robert's army somewhere beyond, slogging through rain-choked glens. She could almost feel his presence, a furnace of stubborn will, pushing closer no matter the mud, no matter hunger. Each day scouts reported his banners a league nearer. He refused her dance of attrition. He meant to press sword to dragon throat again, as though mortal sinew could outlast scaled fury. She halted at a breach where water pooled, reflecting broken sky. A childhood memory flashed. Stories her brother Viserys told of Robert's strength, twisting awe into terror. She had sworn to break that nightmare in sunlight. Yet the man she faced at Old Stones was older, battered, but unbroken. Slaying him would require more than fire. It required unmaking the realm that still beat around his stubborn heart. Footsteps scuffed. Ser Jorah entered, helm tucked under arm. "Scouts from Crackclaw," he reported. "They say Riverlords rally to your banners. Lord Tully's nephew rides with 200 knights. Blackwoods muster bowmen in the misty wood." Even Frey's whispered discontent with the king. Daenerys absorbed the news. "And the north? No word." "Ravens vanish west of the Twins." He hesitated. "But I sense movement. Wolves seldom lie still when stags and dragons wage war. We cannot wait for them." She tapped a gauntlet finger on stone. "Tomorrow we ride to Duskendale, seize the harbor. With that foothold, the river lords may join openly. Yora nodded. The town walls are stout but undermanned. I will speak with the governor. Spare blood. She exhaled. The realm must see mercy side by side with fire. Thunder rumbled across bay water. In that rolling growl Daenerys fancied, she heard Drogon's future bellow. Whole, healed, ready. She dared hope. In a torchlit chamber deep beneath the Red Keep, Qyburn stood before an array of glass alembics. Viscous emerald fluids dripped through brass coils into iron cauldrons, wherein chunks of black stone hissed and glowed. Chains rattled behind him. Ser Gregor Clegane, reborn thing of towering flesh and silence, waited motionless beside a bound mule. On a signal from Qyburn, a jailer slashed the mule's flank. Blood sprayed. The beast screamed. Qyburn poured a ladle of molten green mixture onto the gash. Flesh bubbled, sealing like wax. The mule convulsed but did not die. The maester turned eyes aflame with fascination. Incredible, he whispered. The substance binds, yet cauterizes. If we coat spearheads thus, wounds cauterize instantly. Victims will survive long enough to be frightened. Cersei watched behind an iron lattice, face half-lit, half-shadow. I asked for a poison to fell dragons, not a salve for mules. Your Grace, every discovery reveals new avenues. Qyburn brushed a splatter of blood from his sleeve. But yes, there is another concoction. He gestured to a smaller vial containing silver fluid swirling like quicksilver stirred by unseen spoon. Extracted from basilisk bile, tempered with crushed dragon glass and wildfire salts. It coagulates only when exposed to intense heat, such as dragon flame. On contact, it crystallizes into brittle spines inside flesh. A dragon breathes, its blood turns to glass. One nick, and death follows within heartbeats. Cersei's lips parted. How many vials? 11, with more distilling. Place them in the hands of men who will not flinch. I know just the hands. Qyburn bowed toward the mountain. In the library at Riverrun, Brynden Tully, called Blackfish, studied candlestubs dancing before stacks of war annals. Rain battered shutters. The smell of wet parchment filled the air. Across the table Edmure Tully paced, fists clenched. We must choose, Edmure fretted. Father's bannermen look to us. Some whisper to answer the Dragon Queen's call. Others fear Robert's wrath. Blackfish sipped cooled tea. Wrath is fleeting to men who stand behind walls. But dragons climb walls. He closed the tome. Our niece Sansa writes that winter comes early to the north. The king's stores run thin. A clever man backs the banner with grain. Then we ride for Daenerys? Blackfish considered. He saw Rhaegar's ghost in river water, saw young Ned and Robert laughing after victory. A victory built on promises broken. We ride for the realm, he said at last. And right now the realm's best hope is a truce neither side yet sees. But we shall make them see. How? With arrows pointed at both, the old knight said. Until they remember they share an enemy more deadly than each other. Famine. 30 miles north of Duskendale, Robert's army reached the fork where the Windwater met the King's Road. Rain ceased at dawn. Mist clung low like spilt milk. Sentries reported no sign of dragons, only silent woods and the hiss of river through reeds. Robert ordered camp on a ridge crowned with willows. Sappers dug fire pits. Wagons circled. By noon sun burned off the fog, revealing miles of red poppies opening across meadows once golden with wheat before dragonfire turned soil sterile. The stark beauty unsettled Jaime as he rode perimeter. Each poppy reminded him of blood's delicate permanence. Near the command tent he found Stannis sharpening a long sword, strokes methodical. Sparks leapt, died on damp grass. Word from scouts? Jaime asked. Nothing. Too quiet. Stannis' arm continued, unhurried. She withdrew inland to Maidenpool. Some say she readies fleet at Duskendale. Jaime glanced at the barbed weapon. Expecting single combat? Stannis stopped sharpening, meeting his eyes. I have studied Valyrian treatises on dragons. A clean thrust through the palate into brain kills. He peered at the sword's point. If given the chance, I will take it. And the queen on its back? A lesser worry. Stannis rose, sheathing. You killed one mad king. Fancy another. I fancy no more kingslayings. Jaime's tone chilled the air. Stannis paced step closer. Should Robert fall, realm falls. Better a sword stop tyranny before it sprouts wings. Jaime held Stannis' gaze. When last I slew a king for the realm, it thanked me with scorn. He touched the pommel of his sword. I'll not stain it again unless there is no other road. Stannis considered, then turned away. Pray you have roads left to choose, sir. He strode off, cloak snapping. At dusk, ravens fluttered into Daenerys' war room. A chapel in Maidenpool repurposed with tables and carved benches. Oil maps weighted by iron candlesticks covered the altar. A maester, trembling, translated the messages. Robert's host encamped on Wendwater Ridge. Tyrell fleet anchored at Blackwater Estuary. Karth rumors claim Sellsword companies sail from Pentos to join whichever side hires them first. Daenerys dismissed scribes. Alone with Yora and Missandei, she traced a line on the map. If Robert means to block our advance, he must hold Wendwater Crossing. We strike before he fortifies. Your dragon still heals, Yora warned. Regal and Viserion can carry battle. She met his eyes. The wound slows Drogon, but his flame remains wrath. Missandei whispered. A letter came by way of Riverrun. She presented a sealed scroll. From Sansa Stark. Daenerys broke wax. The letter spoke of northern hardship, children hungry, men weary of southern wars. Sansa offered neutrality until winter passed, but begged mercy for small folk caught between. Daenerys closed her eyes. Visions of charred farms flickered behind lids. We strike Robert, she said softly, but we spare the fields. We teach him famine need not follow dragons, unless he forces it. Yora bowed. You fight with more than fire. The realm will remember. Moon set behind trees when Robert summoned Jaime, Renly, and Stannis to his pavilion. The king sat armorless, broad chest bare, old scars silver under lamplight. Wine jug lay half empty. He addressed them with the bluntness of a smith's hammer. Tomorrow we march for Frogmere Ford. Scouts report shallow water, good footing. We fortify riverbank. Draw her dragons low. Scorpions bury them. Renly tugged gloves. What if she circles and strikes our supply wagons? Then we bait her again. Robert's eyes gleamed. I've sent word to Lady Olenna. Sail those 15 ships up Blackwater. Torch the bay with wildfire should dragons appear. Drive them inland into our bolts. Stannis nodded approvingly. Renly swallowed doubt. Jaime folded arms, thinking of sailors flailing beneath emerald infernos. He said nothing. Robert leaned forward, voice low. If I fall, Renly commands. Stannis leads the rearguard. Jaime, ensure the queen and my sons reach safety. His gaze lingered on the Kingslayer. Can I trust you? Jaime bowed. I gave my word. Robert studied him a moment, then laughed, rough as gravel. Words be damned. Your honor keeps you, sir, even when it ruins you. He raised the jug, drank, wiped beard. Now sleep. Battle dawns. Dawn cracked the world open with a skirl of horns. Robert's army rolled west, standard-bearers trudging through river mist that clutched ankles like dying hands. Across the fields, autumn leaves fluttered red-orange, hinting at fires yet unlit. Halfway to Frogmere, scouts signaled, enemy ahead. Jaime spurred to the rise and saw movement. A long cloud of dust, banners crimson and black and silver fluttering above waves of mounted spears. At their center marched unsullied phalanxes, shields locked. Overhead Viserion circled, pale torch against sky. Regal skimmed treetops, emerald flame rippling in his maw as if testing wind.
No Drogon.
Yet, Robert's laugh rolled like thunder. He rode forward, hammer aloft, and his shout carried, Form! Lines rippled into place. Scorpions creaked, cables taut. Wildfire bolts glimmered ominous. Rain-soaked ground trembled beneath hooves of Tyrell cavalry taking flank. Sellsword archers knelt, knocking red-fletched shafts. Across the narrow meadow, Daenerys climbed a dais of woven shields carried by Unsullied. She raised a rib-scarred hand. Silence deepened until birdsong faded. Her white hair lifted in river breeze, eyes glowing violet under laden sky. She spoke Valyrian. The sound drifted like silver bells. Unsullied struck spear butts once. Dothraki unsheathed a rack, ululating. Then Daenerys spread her arms. Viserion shrieked and plunged. Robert roared answer. Loose! Scorpions fired in ragged volley. Bolts hissed, trailing green vapor. Viserion banked. One bolt grazed flank, wildfire blooming across scales. The dragon screamed, flame gout sputtering. He careened, crashed through elm stand, trees splintering. Regal dived next, fiery breath strafing Sellsword ranks. Men engulfed fled, some into river, steam billowing. Yet the line held. Scorpions reloaded inexorably. Daenerys signaled again. Unsullied advanced at measured pace, shields locked. Behind them Dothraki fanned out, hoofbeats like rolling drums. Atop her dais, the queen scanned sky, searching. Jaime followed her gaze and saw it. A shadow rising beyond clouds, wider than wings should span. Drogon, the wounded giant's sword, wing braced by leather straps but functional. Each stroke labored yet deliberate. Smoke hissed from nostrils. Robert spotted him too. He pointed, bellowing orders. Every scorpion crew swiveled. Drogon descended in furious shudder, heading straight over the river where Tyrell knights massed. Arrows peppered the sky. Many bounced, some stuck quivering. Half-healed scales cracked, black blood speckled air. Yet Drogon's jaws opened, releasing a torrent of fire so wide it seemed the river itself ignited. Tyrell banners crumpled. Knights vanished in white-hot glare. Where flame hit water, steam towers roared, boiling men alive within armor. Jaime's ears rang with screams. He spurred toward Robert, who stood unmoved, hammer ready. The king signaled the mountain. Ser Gregor advanced with a cohort of black-armored men. The Dragonbane squad Qyburn had bred in secrecy, each holding spearheads coated with silver toxin. Drogon wheeled, bleeding, rage incarnate. He turned east, diving for Robert's command ridge. Bolts fired, 2 struck body, 1 lodging near throat joint. Wildfire ignited, staining neck green. Drogon lurched but came on. Robert sprinted uphill, ungainly yet unstoppable. He swung the hammer overhead, voice roaring challenge to sky. Jaime galloped after, heart pounding. The mountain raised an enormous crossbow built like siege engine, too massive for any man but him. He knelt, bracing. A silver-tipped bolt the thickness of a young tree trunk slid into groove, dripping poisonous sheen. Qyburn shouted arcane words. Gregor cocked the string with a lever wind, muscles bunching. Drogon closed, 70 yards, 50. Flame built in throat, a rumbling furnace. Gregor fired. The bolt shot like lightning. Drogon veered too late. It punched through wing-root membrane, burying deep in torso. No wildfire. Qyburn's poison instead seeped along shaft, disappearing into black wound. Drogon screamed, flame misfiring upward in fractured plume. He beat wings once, twice, faltering. Robert charged beneath, hammer aimed for the exposed belly. But the dragon still lived. Drogon's tail whipped, smashing Robert sideways. The king flew 10 feet, struck rock, rolled. Armor buckled. Breath burst from lungs. Jaime launched from saddle, shield raised over Robert as debris rained. Drogon crashed into meadow, earth shaking. Poison worked swift. Veins beneath scales frosted, turning translucence as crystallization spread. The dragon writhed, choking on its own blood turning to glass. Daenerys screamed. She leapt from dais, sprinting through lines. Arrows flew. Unsullied shielded her path. She reached Drogon's head, caressing snout. His eyes clouded with jagged shards crawling across golden iris. He exhaled one last plume. No fire, only glass dust sparkling in dawn. Then stillness. Silence swept battlefield. Even rain paused, as if sky mourned. Robert staggered upright with Jaime's help. Helmet missing, face blood-smeared. He stared at fallen giant, disbelief and triumph dueling within. "It is done," he rasped. "By the gods, it is done." Across trampled earth, Daenerys knelt, shoulders shaking, hair plastered by tears and rain. Rhaegal landed near, wings mantly. In her, roars throbbing with lament. Viserion crawled from broken elm's stand, limping, keening mournfully. Unsullied halted, spears grounded, awaiting Queen's word. Dothraki pulled mounts into uneasy circle, eyes wide. None had ever seen a Khalasar's mount die. The field exhaled grief and shock. Robert raised hammer, intent to press advantage. But Jaime seized his wrist. "Look," he warned. Stannis shouted too. "Hold!" For Daenerys rose then, slow as dawn over grave. She placed a hand upon Drogon's crystallized brow. Shards tinkled, falling like tears of glass. Then she turned to face the king. In her eyes blazed something beyond sorrow. Rhaegal took to air with one beat. Viserion followed, though wounded. They climbed, circling high, their combined roars shattering hush. Daenerys spoke. No words, only a foreign cry that rang across meadow. Unsullied echoed with clashing spears. Dothraki howled. Suddenly the ranks surged. Not charging but forming shield walls spiraling outward, enclosing queen and dragon corpse in living fortress. Robert lifted hammer, but hesitation checked him. He had slain a legend. Yet another still flew, and the wrath now born in that queen's heart might raise kingdoms. Tyrion rode breathless from rear, hair plastered. "Your grace, retire. We have broken her today. Do not squander on pride." Robert's jaw worked. He spat blood. At last he nodded. Horns blew retreat. Lannister and Baratheon lines withdrew, bearing wounded, dragging scorpions. The mountain hefted empty crossbow, following. Daenerys watched, face unreadable. She touched broken bolt still protruding from Drogon's wing, drew it out, and bloody glass rained with sickening clinks. She snapped the shaft across knee, tossed pieces aside. Then she whispered something to the dragons above. They dove, bathing Drogon's corpse in synchronized gouts of flame, emerald and orange merging. Wildfire residues caught, burning with eerie multicolored light until the great body melted into obsidian-edged slag, unrecognizable, unclaimable. Smoke spiraled high, thick as prophecy. Through it Daenerys disappeared with her host, marching eastward, spears glimmering like fallen stars. 3 days after Frogmere, King Robert lay in a tent at Bitterbridge, ribs wrapped, spirit feverish. Maester Pylus rubbed tincture of poppy into wounds. Renly fretted. Stannis wrote letters demanding each lord send reserves. Jaime sat by bedside, polishing sword he had not drawn. Robert's eyes opened. "Did we win?" Voice rough. Jaime considered. "We killed a dragon. Only one. For now." Robert chuckled, wincing. "That is enough for songs." He coughed. "But songs won't feed the realm." Outside, horns announced arrival of a rider. Moments later Lady Brienne entered, helm tucked. "A raven from Riverrun," she reported. "They propose parley." Robert's brow furrowed. "Parley? Who speaks for them?" "Brynden Tully and Sansa Stark."
Ga je mee met Brines Kees?
She nodded slightly, hope or warning. Robert closed eyes. "Fetch me wine, and fetch the map. The game changes." In the burned shell of Maidenpool's sept, Daenerys stood before a hastily erected pyre of black glass shards. Drogon's remains cooled into jagged monuments. She placed a hand upon them. They hummed faintly, warmth trapped like heartbeats. Footsteps. Yora approached. "Ravens from the Vale, my queen. Lord Royce will not march until the snow lines settle. Then we march without them." Her voice was steel's edge. "How long until Rhaegal's fire melts the outer gate of King's Landing? With Drogon gone, scorpions may shoot him from sky if he hovers too long." She spun. "He will not hover. He will dive. Tears shone on lashes. They will feel what I feel. Half measures die with Drogon. You're a lowered head. What of the innocents? Daenerys' breath hitched. She remembered Sansa's letter, the hungry children. Her heart waged war with her wrath. She opened hand against glass shards, palm bleeding anew. Blood sizzled on surface. We give them choice, she said at last. Open the gates, yield the usurper, and live. Refuse, and burn with him. You're abowed. Daenerys turned to Missandei, who waited, eyes moist. Send ravens to every lord. The dragon does not arm alone. Promise bread, justice, and counsel to all who stand aside. The world they know ends. Let them choose how theirs begins. Missandei set to work. In the twisting tower of Gulltown, Lord Peter Baelish gazed into a crystal goblet of sweet arbor red, swirling. News of Drogon's fall reached him via whisper, not raven. Yet he trusted it. Sounded just like Robert, the boorish bastard. He smiled thinly. A dead dragon tipped scales drastically. Now fear of fire abetted. Men might weigh allegiances anew, and coin might speak louder than prophecy. He drafted letters to Tycho Nestoris in Bravos, loans to fund cell sales for whichever side offered sweetest fruit at war's end. Perhaps both. He sealed messages, thinking, a realm divided yields richest harvest. Let kings and dragons bleed. He would reap. Far north at Winterfell, Jon Snow faced House Karstark's envoys in the Great Hall. Behind him banners of the dire wolf and the wildling Red Hand hung side by side. Karstark men demanded he muster North's might to Robert's aid, citing oaths of fealty. Jon listened, fingers drumming Ghost's fur where the wolf lounged at his feet. When they finished, he replied evenly, the North remains guard of its people first. Winter's chill creeps sooner each dawn. We will not march south to spill northern blood for southern wars. Karstark envoy snorted. Then Dragonfire will march north for you. Perhaps, Jon said, rising. But a dragon queen spared winter refugees at White Harbor last moon. Remember that mercy before you threaten my halls. Ghost's low growl underlined words. The envoys withdrew. Sansa emerged from the gallery, letter in hand. She answered, Daenerys grants safe passage for bread convoys if we remain neutral. Jon exhaled. Then neutrality buys time for new snow stores. He glanced at the Raven's loft. But watch skies. War seldom honors parchments. Cersei convened small council in Tower of the Hand. Qyburn, Pycelle, and Littlefinger attended. Reports spread like mold. Lords wavering, Sel's words auctioning loyalty. Common folk whispering dread of another dragon charge. The dead beast near Frogmere became pilgrimage site. Peasants chipped glass scales as talismans. Superstition favors her, Cersei snarled. We must remind Realm the lion still roars. Littlefinger steepled fingers. If Drogon's remains are relics, we craft relics of our own. He produced a locket. Inside, a shard of black crystal. Distribute at market. Tokens of victory over dragonkind. Spin tale that the king alone slew the beast. Fear turns to faith. Cersei's smile slashed. And faith binds subjects stronger than chains. She turned to Qyburn. Prepare the mountain squad for a midnight sortie. We strike her baggage lines, steal her bread wagons, and leave sigils of northern wolves. Sow mistrust among her would-be allies. Qyburn bowed. Pycelle open-mouthed to object, thought better. Plans forged, the council dispersed, each haunted by shadows of flames yet to come. On a windswept bluff above the Riverlands plain, Brynden Tully met Ser Davos Seaworth beneath a tattered peace banner. Only 4 guards each. Ravens cawed overhead, sense of damp leaf mold thick. You carry stark words, Blackfish said, accepting scroll. Davos handed it. And a proposal. Starks will mediate Council of Lords within Riverrun's walls. Dragons invited. Baratheon as well. Blackfish unfurled scroll, brows knitting. A moot of the great houses. When last such gathered, Aegon crowned by fire. This time, Davos said, perhaps we crown sense. He looked across valley where distant palls of smoke testified to raiders torching more fields. Winter loomed, war raged, dragons wept shards of glass. Davos prayed some spark of mercy yet glimmered in men and queens alike. Blackfish sealed scroll in oiled leather. Let us hope they heed before the sound of hammers drowns out all words. They clasped forearms, parting beneath the caw of ravens, sentinels of fate, forever hungry. Weeks bled into each other. Battles small and brutal flared across the crownlands. Raiding parties clashing at crossroads, scorpion crews trading volleys with dragon strafes, grain wagons stolen and stolen back. Fields became chessboards. Villages became pawns sacrificed to position. Everywhere, tongues wagged the legend. The king who slew a dragon, the queen who forged glass from grief. Behind lines, hunger gnawed. Tyrell grain-fed kings landing but not enough. Refugees choked gates, pleading bread. Riots simmered. Cersei loosed gold cloaks. Blood-stained cobblestones. Still the whispers. Open the gates to the dragon. She feeds children. For each rumor crushed, 3 more bloomed. Daenerys marched slow, methodical, capturing holdfasts then releasing them after swearing fealty. She accepted hostages but treated them gently, sending them home with silver coins bearing 3-headed dragon and the word justice in High Valyrian. Everywhere she went the shard of Drogon set as pendant at her throat caught sunlight, glinting like frozen flame. Some called it her heart, broken yet burning. Robert recovered strength, ribs knitting. He sparred daily though cough lingered. He forged alliances by marriage promises, Renly to Marjorie, Tommen to a Frey daughter, to bind river lords and reach. He paraded Drogon's skull, carried in wagon wherever army camped. The ghastly crystal grin mesmerized men, bolstered courage. Yet nights Jaime heard Robert wake screaming, haunted by the dragon's dying shriek. Winter's breath crept earlier than maesters predicted. Frost nipped leaves mid-autumn. Snow flurries dusted Moat Cailin by mid-month. Everyone knew. If war dragged into true winter, armies would starve, dragons would freeze or starve, but small folk would die first. Urgency sharpened every blade. Deep in Blackwater Rush's tidal marsh, the mountain squad crept on reed rafts, silent under moon sliver. They rode to Daenerys' rear camp where supply wagons rested under light guard. Poisoned crossbow bolts felled sentries. Crates of bread and salted fish loaded onto stolen mules. Leftover sacks soaked in lamp oil, torched. Gregor left wolf banners. By dawn smoke rose and accusations flew between northern volunteers and Unsullied. Trust cracked. Jorah urged punitive raids. Daenerys refused, citing Sansa's plea. Still, whispers spread that northern knives cut their stores. Rhaegal's roars at dusk sounded less fearless, more frustrated. Robert, hearing of success, planned larger strike on her main host. But Stannis argued caution. Dragons still too, supply lines thin. They needed decisive engagement, so they plotted to lure Daenerys to the ruins of Summerhall, where open ground favored scorpions hidden among collapsed walls. Spies carried word to Daenerys. Robert sought parley at Summerhall to discuss River Unmoot. Suspicion warred with hope for peace. Missandei and Tyrion exchanged letters, each seeking terms. At last the Queen agreed to meet, under flight of Rhaegal only, with Robert under banner of truce, each flanked by 50 men. The date: first night of the Hunter's Moon. Summerhall stones glowed silver beneath full moon. Crickets sang funeral dirge among burnt husks of once great halls. High overhead, Rhaegal circled like emerald comet, flame flaring occasionally to remind men of contract's peril. Robert arrived on horseback, donned in older, humbler armor without crown. Jaime, Renly, 2 Kingsguard accompanied. From East Lane Daenerys rode white mare, cloak of black wool, shard pendant at throat. Jorah, Grey Worm, Missandei followed. They met where great sepia mosaic once lay, now black grass curled over broken tiles. Moonbeams washed faces pale. Silence held. Robert spoke first, voice deep but weary. "We both bleed, girl. Your dragon fell. My people starve. Winter nears. A kingdom half-ash is no prize. Daenerys' eyes shimmered. You speak as if you care for realm, yet you burned it 20 years ago to seize this throne. I burned a tyrant, Robert said, and thought peace followed. Instead I drank and hunted while wolves closed. I will not leave realm to same flames I ended. Nor will I. Daenerys gestured to Shard. I have seen what blind fury costs. I will spare small folk, if you yield throne you stole. Robert's laugh held no mirth. Yield? After all this, why cling to iron chair when you could live to raise your sons? I will grant your house storms end in perpetuity. The realm knows you as hero. Let them remember you so. Jaime watched muscles knot in Robert's jaw, a man tasting both relief and poison. He gripped hammer hilt. And your dragons? Robert asked. Will you keep them leashed? Regal and Viserion guard peace, she said. But I will forge council of lords to curb Queen's might. No more tyranny. Robert snorted. Councils crumble when dragons circle. Then let dragons guide, not rule. Her voice softened. Help me rebuild, Robert. End this war now. Breeze sighed through char-black beams. Jaime sensed history leaning in, breathless. Robert opened mouth. Then horns blared beyond ruins. Chaos erupted. From Treeline, scorpion bolts whistled upward toward Regal. Stannis' secret batteries ignoring truce. Yora shouted warning. Regal banked, but a bolt clipped wing. Dragon shrieked. Unsullied drew spears. Kingsguard drew swords. Stand down, Robert roared, fury lighting eyes. Too late. Grey Worm launched at Scorpion crew, Iraq slitting throats. Lannister shields clashed with unsullied phalanx. Moonlight painted melee into nightmare. Daenerys wheeled mare, shouting for Yora to safeguard Regal. But Renly spurred to block her path, blade out. Yield your grace, he called. She answered with fire. Regal swooped despite wounded wing, blazing a corridor between forces, forcing men apart. Heat-seared, Jaime dragged Robert into cover behind fallen archway. Robert hammered shield aside, bellowing for ceasefire, but sound drowned in flame. Missandei knelt over wounded Grey Worm. Arrows protruded from his side. Unsullied encircled Queen, shields locked. Tyrion arrived secretly with Stannis, shouted orders to withdraw, but panic snowballed. In confusion, one Scorpion crew launched poison bolt. It struck Horse of Renly, throwing him. Horse toppled onto him with crack of bone. Screams. Jaime lunged through smoke, hauled Renly clear, but leg twisted unnatural angle. Robert knelt by brother, anguished roar. Amid smoke, Daenerys dismounted, helping Missandei support Grey Worm. Regal landed, shielding them. Another bolt sailed, piercing Dragon's flank. Not fatal, but fury rekindled. Regal's flame bathed Scorpion in molten slag, crew incinerated. Robert stood, chest heaving, turned to Stannis emerging from shadows, sword drawn. You broke truce, he snarled. Stannis' jaw clenched. Parley was trap. I sprung it first. You damned fool. Robert swung hammer, missing as Stannis stepped back. Jaime interposed, shouting for calm. Unsullied ring tightened. Kingsguards raised blades. Deadlocks pulsed, seconds stretching. Then Daenerys' voice carried, clear despite chaos. Enough. This ends here. She stepped forward, shard pendant blazing with firelight, Grey Worm sagging behind her. I will parley no longer with oathbreakers. She pointed at Robert. Ride to King's Landing. Empty the city. One moon's turn. When the hunter's moon next rises, I fly. The realm will burn or bend. Robert's face crumpled between rage and grief. He clutched Renly's limp form. Jaime saw tears mix with soot. You fly, Robert muttered. I will stand. Ash or glory. Daenerys swung onto Regal's neck despite wound. The dragon strained, talons gouging earth, but took wing, riding thermals away. Viserion joined, blood still staining scales. Unsullied retreated in formations, carrying wounded. Robert knelt alone amid ruins, hammer on ground, Renly dying in his arms. Jaime covered them with cloak. Moonlight silvered Robert's tears. Stannis sheathed blade, face unreadable. Summerhall, birthplace of tragedy, tasted it again. The next days broke hearts. Renly lingered, feverish, until dawn when he whispered Marjorie's name and died. Cersei, upon hearing, raged at council, blaming Stannis. Stannis accepted blame in silence. Robert sank into dark pall, emerging only to inspect city walls or stride Blacksmith Row where men riveted anti-dragon scorpions day and night. Muscles on his arms knotted with hammer swings at forging heads he quenched in wine barrel. He said wine wasted on sorrow. Daenerys encamped at Rook's Rest, raising Black's standard at dawn. A dragon skull entwined with stag crown, shattered, beneath words fire ends lies. She sent ravens repeating ultimatum. One moon's grace. Hunger lines outside King's Landing thickened. Carts of refugees turned away or conscripted to dig ditches. Lady Olenna rallied reach banners to march, ostensibly to relieve capital, but privately wrote to both sides offering fruit if spared thorns. Tullis hosted Mood of Lords. Jon Snow sent Maester Samwell as envoy bearing histories of Long Night, warning that winter's true enemy lay north. Few listened. Littlefinger whispered to sell sails. Whichever side first paid in gold dragons minted after war would rule seas. Bravo's bankers extended credit to both. The moon waxed fat. Snow dusted rooftops of Duskendale, unusual for season. Dragonfire danced against night whenever Regal tested Healing Wing. On eve before final moonrise, Jaime climbed ramparts to find Tyrion perched, feet dangling over drop. City below murmured restless, a living creature fearing butcher dawn. Do dragons dream? Tyrion mused. If they do, tonight they surely dream of burning us all. Jaime leaned on Crenel. And if they don't, then our dreams burn us instead. Tyrion offered wineskin. Jaime refused. I once murdered a king to save a city, Jaime said. I see same madness now, but in hearts of thousands. How do I slay that? Tyrion sighed. With stories, perhaps. Or with love. He sipped. Yet love has poor aim. Daenerys loved her dragon. Robert loved his brother. Love sharpened blades, not dulled. Then habit will kill us, not hate. Tyrion straightened. Well, brother, tomorrow I attend Queen's final council. Cersei means to unleash all wildfire beneath streets if dragons breach walls. A last mad king flourish. Jaime's stomach lurched. She would kill half the city. Tyrion nodded, eyes wet. History repeats, though actors change costumes. Jaime's mind raced to years past, to pyres he prevented. He felt cold steel of decision again. Where is the cash? Hidden throughout, but main vault under Sept cellars. Qyburn guards. And the mountain. Jaime pushed off wall. Tell no one. I will find it. Tyrion caught his arm. If you fail. Jaime's smile was brittle. Then I die as Kingsguard should, saving innocence. Tyrion's eyes glistened. Then let gods grant you straighter aim this time. Moon climbed, round as shield, gilding Blackwater Bay with tarnished silver. Daenerys watched from cliff at Rook's Rest, wind plucking cloak. Regal crouched trembling in anticipation. Viserion's wounds bound with steel mesh. She closed eyes, inhaled cold. Memory of Drogon's final roar haunted, but resolve tempered grief. One more dawn, she thought. One chance for them to open gates. Then a fire. Behind, Missandei approached with letter. From Sansa Stark. She begs again you spare city's children. Daenerys read. Ink blur. Edda's tears welled. She folded letter, pressed it to shard. She whispered, children once played under dragons and kings alike. Let them again. She strode to Regal, mounting. Yora arrayed unsullied below, torches outlining marching order. In 2 hours, they would stand 6 miles from city, within flight range. Ultimatum would end. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent. In King's Landing, Jaime donned black cloak of city watch, hood low. He slipped past drowsy sentries at Great September of Baelor, descending catacomb stairs. Lantern flickered. Damp stone smelled of dust and rot. He counted alcoves. Seventh on left concealed valve door disguised as Saint's Relief. He pressed. It clicked open. Cavern beyond glowed faint green. Vats of wildfire lined walls. Ceiling wax gleaming oily. He exhaled, dread curling stomach. One spark could incinerate. A shadow stirred. Ser Gregor emerged, armor swelling dark corridor. His skull helm glared, eyes void. Jaime shut door behind, drew sword's silent whisper. Stand Azide. The mountain raised greatsword. No words. They clashed. Jaime ducked first sweep, strike that shattered stone pillar. He thrust low, glanced off Grieve. Mountain retaliated, blade carving sparks. Jaime parried, arms numbing. He danced back between vats, praying steel wouldn't ring sparks onto volatile air. Gregor lunged, shoulder-checking Jaime into barrel. Wildfire sloshed, glowing menacing. Pain shot through ribs. Jaime rolled, regained footing, slashed across visor gap. Sword squealed, leaving dent. Mountain roared, backhand sending Jaime reeling. Lantern crashed, oil spilling, flame licking floor. Wildfire hissed, catching. Green tongues leapt. Jaime's heart seized. He dived forward, hacking at mountain sword arm where chain links met flesh. Blade bit, severing strap. Gregor's gauntlet loosened. Sword faltered. Jaime seized moment, drove point through eye slit. Metal screamed. Blade pierced rancid flesh. Mountain convulsed, dropping sword. Jaime twisted, withdrew. Gregor collapsed, helmet clanging, blood like pitch. Fire spread along oil pool toward vats. Jaime limped, snatched lantern base, smothered flame with cloak. Sparks died, green fade. Breathing ragged, he scanned. Vault door across chamber led to river sewer outlet. He crossed, unlocking bar. Behind, wildfire gurgled ominously. He heaved door open, cool night air rushed. Moonlight spilled over narrow channel leading to bay. He turned back. Fires extinguished, but risk remained. He located will valve controlling canal flood. With effort he spun. Saltwater sluice roared, flooding floor, diluting wildfire.
Danger courbé.
Jaime sagged, blood dripping from nose. He exited into river tunnel, ceiling behind. City lights gleamed above like distant candles. He whispered prayer for the living, for the dead, for absolution he would never believe. Dawn broke frost-rimmed, sky painted lavender over city walls. Robert stood upon battlements, cloaked in bearskin, hammer resting on balustrade. Next to him paused Tyrion, eyes rimmed red. "Scouts?" Robert asked. "Her army camps at the Hay Gates, 3 leagues distant," Tyrion replied. "Dragons airborne soon." Robert nodded. "And the wildfire stockpiles?" "Relocated to River Holdfast at your order. Qyburn's missing. Ser Gregor too. Jaime's doing." "Likely," Tyrion admitted with tired pride. Robert grunted. "One less madness." Bells tolled across city calling small folk to prayer. Yet churches already packed. People clutched idols, bread, each other. Wind tasted metallic. Robert breathed deep. "If I die, see Tommen sits the throne. And keep him from his mother's poison." Tyrion huffed. "Easier to cage dragons." "Try." Robert clasped Dwarf's shoulder. "I wronged you often. Forgive a fool." Tyrion swallowed. "Only if you survive to drink with me." Robert mustered a grin. "Done." Horns blared from seaward. Tyrell fleet rowing upriver. Catapults loaded with quarried stones tipped wildfire. Sailors donned mittens soaked in brine. All primed. Eastward, 2 specks crested horizon. Regal and Viserion, emerald and pallid gold, sun flashing off scars. They banked, descending in roaring arcs. Behind them sun glinted on spear points of unsullied, banners rippling. Robert hefted hammer. Below, scorpions tensed. Barrels of quicklime readied to blind dragons. Archers steadied. Dragons approached outer range 3,000 yards. Scorpions fired. Bolts fell short, splashing river. Dragons adjusted, climbing. Daenerys rode Regal's neck, eyes narrowed against wind. Viserion roared, echo of grief. She spied city glinting, walls bristling. Her heart thundered. She raised shard pendant, kissed it. "Dracaries," she whispered. Flames blossomed from twin mouths, streams arcing gracefully downward, merging midair into starburst of fire that seared morning. Robert lifted hammer one last time, voice booming across ramparts, a challenge older than kings. History held its breath, and the dance recommenced, fiercer, final. Dragonfire against will of storm, glass shards of memory clashing with steel of present. Somewhere in that blaze, the fate of realms pivoted on unseen fulcrum. The mercy of a grieving queen, the courage of a haunted king, and the hearts of countless souls praying beneath wings and walls. Above all, snowflakes drifted from pale sky, melting in heat, forecasting winter that cared nothing for crowns or dragons, only for the quiet after fire when ashes cooled and seeds of tomorrow waited, buried in blackened soil, dreaming of spring. The first orange tongue of sunrise curled over the crownlands just as a hush descended upon every soul either side of the Blackwater. It was the kind of hush that swallowed birdsong and stilled even the restless clatter of rigging in the half-repaired Tyrell squadron moored upriver. Frost had silvered the parapets and turned the trampled grass beyond the mud gate into a brittle crust. When a barefoot urchin darted past and cracked it underfoot, the sound was loud enough to make a clutch of gold cloaks flinch and grip their spears with sweating palms. King Robert Baratheon stood atop the gatehouse tower in plain steel, no gilding save the crowned stag etched on his breastplate. A threadbare cloak, Ned Stark's gift long ago, hung from his shoulders, dark with melted frost. In his right hand he held the hammer that had felled a prince and a dragon. In his left, a rolled parchment smeared with candle wax. Daenerys Targaryen's ultimatum, opened and reopened so many times that the creases were about to shear apart. Behind him, Tyrion Lannister cleared his throat as delicately as the morning would allow. Robert did not glance around. "Send them in." Tyrion motioned to the lift. Two Sellsword trumpeters in patched motley shuffled forward and raised brass horns, already shivering before a single note was blown. Robert nodded. The horns screamed, the sound ricocheting off every slate roof and shuttered window in the waking city. A long barge pushed off from the quay below, white banner raised. 30 retainers rowed, each stroke coinciding with the tolling of Baelor's bells. In the prow stood one of the High Septon's lesser brothers, rotund and swaddled in wool so thick his arms stuck out like loaves. When he came within shouting distance, Robert cupped a hand to his mouth. "Has she answered?" The Septon's voice quivered across water. "Her Grace the Dragon Queen declines further parley until the city surrenders. She repeats her promise of safe passage for the innocent. And bread." Robert breathed in, chest rasping. "Return to her," he called, "and say the last Baratheon still stands." The monk bowed so low his hood dipped into the river, then signaled for the oarsmen to backwater. Bells tolled again as the barge coasted away, leaving only ripples and a hanging question in the cold air. Behind Robert, Tyrion exhaled. "Prince Tommen is already in the crypts with Ser Meryn. Docks have started loading the first refugee craft." He did not add that only half the small folk would likely fit before Dragonfire made a mockery of timetables. Robert kept his eyes on the eastern sky, where two specks moved in slow concentric orbits, Regal and Viserion keeping watch, like living hours on a clock counting down to doom. "If she means to spare the innocents, she should start by leaving them where they are," he muttered. "Better the walls than open water where Tyrell fools might light the river again. Lady Olenna swears on all 7 she will not launch without your signal." Robert grunted. "She swore on all 7 last time too." He turned at last, voice gone rough as a whetstone. "Where's the Kingslayer?" Tyrion wiped frost from his brow. "Jaime has not returned. My latest raven says he crossed the Rush by night and rides with a Riverlord escort. If he lives, he'll enter through the Dragon Gate before dusk. If..." Robert's eyes flicked toward the September, where a plume of ordinary smoke, just incense, they'd said, rose skyward. He hoped Jaime had indeed spoiled the wildfire caches, but faith was thinner than the ice dusting every eve. 6 miles east, Daenerys Targaryen walked the muddy lane between two neat columns of Unsullied standing knee-deep in frost. Their shields mirrored dawn like sheets of red glass. Her own breath made ghosts that drifted ahead of her feet. Rhaegal crouched just beyond the treeline, low to the ground so as not to panic her infantry while snowmelt still clung to his scales in glittering beads. Even at rest, each breath from his nostrils unfurled steam that smelled of flint and furnace heat. Jorah Mormont matched her steps. Viserion wing beats clean, but strain will tear the stitches if he fights too long. She lifted a hand, letting gray-blue outlines of the city peek through bare branches. The walls looked fragile in such pale light, as if one morning's chill might shatter them. Then the fight must not be long. Grey Worm limped up, bandages hidden under his tunic, face blank as alabaster. "The phalanxes wait," he said. "When your grace commands, the first spear will advance with banners reversed." Reversed? Daenerys frowned, black side out, "to show we come in mourning, not conquest." She paused, cool air stirring strands of hair across her cheek. Margaery Tyrell's raven the night before had implored mercy again. Margaery, who sat in chambers by Renly's bier, praying to 7 silent gods. Daenerys had burned the raven after reading, but its words fluttered still. Mourning. Yes, they all mourn something now. "Let it be so," she said, "and pass the word. Any man who throws his weapon down will be spared." Grey Worm saluted with spear across chest. When he strode away, Jorah murmured, "You trust they'll hear you over battle?" "No," she answered, "but I must try." Jaime Lannister rode through the Dragon Gate at noon, his borrowed horse all but collapsing once the cobbles began. The gate guards barely recognized him. Unshaven, armor dented, black cloak stiff with dried river water. Inside the courtyard, a thin crowd of refugees huddled around cookfires, watching him with dull, accepting eyes, as if any rider might now be the herald of salvation or doom. A gold-cloak captain hurried to intervene. Jaime slid from the saddle, landing stiffly, and waved the man closer. "Tell the hand I put the wildfire to the sword," he rasped. "Then find me a maester who can sew more neatly than I cut." Only then did he look down to notice his right thigh soaked crimson from a long slice earned during his duel with the mountain. Adrenaline had carried him 3 leagues. Pain followed now like a hound. They half-carried him to the Sept Infirmary, where mercifully no longer did Qyburn reign. Instead, Grand Maester Pycelle himself leaned over Jaime, fingers surprisingly deft for one so tremulous. He tutted at the wound, sprinkled silver powder, and began the business of stitching. Every puncture of the needle sent bolts of fire up Jaime's side. He bit down on a strip of boiled leather, eyes fixed on vaulted ceiling mosaics depicting the 7. The mother's face looked oddly like Cersei's when he first saw her after the rebellion. Proud, cruel, luminous. By the time he emerged into the cloister, Tyrion was there, hair windblown, cheeks ruddy from climbing too many stairs too quickly. They embraced, awkward, careful of stitches, and Jaime whispered, "Tell Robert the cellars will not burn. Only question now is whether the skies will." Tyrion's mouth twitched. Spoken like a poet. Now let's see whether poets die of arrow or dragon first. Mid-afternoon, Daenerys ordered the army forward. The Unsullied marched with steady drumbeats, reversed banners black against leaden sky. The Dothraki drove herds of captured oxen ahead, breathing shields to absorb scorpion bolts if the city's engineers aimed low. At center rode the queen on a destrier armor-plated at chest and flanks, shard pendant winking between cloak folds. She had not ridden regal yet. The dragon would launch the moment the horns of the city answered, no sooner. From the ramparts, Robert watched them come. Archers lined crenellations shoulder to shoulder. Each man carried brine-soaked cloth to wrap arrowheads in case wildfire splashed. Scorpions stood 4 deep, and scattered among them at irregular intervals. Cumbersome crank crossbows engineered by Gendry Baratheon in the last fortnight, each firing spear-length quarrels tipped in the same silver glass alloy that had felled Drogon. One hit could kill, but only if they survived long enough to fire. "Hold," Robert said whenever a scorpion crew looked hungry for range. "Closer." The queen's host halted 500 paces from the ditch that ran the length of the fields. For a heartbeat nothing moved except pennons flapping and the breathing of thousands. Then a single rider left the unsullied line, a young girl in red robes carrying a plain staff capped by a small iron cage. Within the cage a single candle flickered, despite the wind. Melisandre, some whispered who had seen her in Dragonstone's halls. But this girl looked younger, almost unsure. She rode to within a stone's throw of the ditch and raised the cage high. The flame bobbed. She spoke, voice higher than expected, though it carried. The queen offers peace, her final offer. Open your gates now. All who remain inside when the sun touches the horizon will be judged with their king. Arrows creaked on bowstrings. Robert lowered his hammer and stepped onto a projecting stone buttress. Without amplification, his words still rolled like storm drums. Tell your queen I once hunted a boar that took my belly. I lived through that, through rebellion, through dragonfire. I will die before I bend. Go back. Prepare your mercy for your own dead. The girl bowed her head. She wheeled her horse and rode back. Tyrion muttered, "That was not entirely diplomatic." "Diplomacy died with Renly," Robert growled. He raised his hammer. Archers. The first flights hissed over the ditch, rattling against unsullied shields. The companies did not advance. They braced. Above them something shifted, wind, but with a thrum. Rhaegal rose from the tree line in a leap that ripped half the pine tops away. Viserion joined, 5 heartbeats later, flank still stiff but wings pumping. "Now," Robert said. Scorpions snapped. Bolts streaked upward. Rhaegal banked. 2 missed entirely. 1 skittered along a tail ridge and spun off. Viserion climbed, spiraling. A Tyrell catapult heaved a barrel of quicklime. On contact with a rising draft it burst into a powder cloud that billowed straight into the dragon's face. Viserion recoiled, sneezing flame that ignited the lime midair. A blinding white flash. Dragonfire lit the cloud like daylight. Archers along the wall turned away, vision seared. Robert's engineers cranked again. A silver-tipped bolt loaded into Gendry's contraption. "Aim for the heart," Robert urged. But the dragon pair shifted tactics. Rhaegal did not dive. Rather, he hovered beyond effective range, jaws opening not for a single stream but for staccato coughs. Gouts of flame that arced high and rained down in parabolic sheets, like fiery hailstones. Each gout landed unpredictably, one on an empty patch of field, but another on a cluster of sellswords behind the scorpions. The fighters burst into screaming silhouettes. Panic rippled. In the southern district, one of Lady Olenna's bastards among the sailors, desperate, cut an anchor cable too soon. A Tyrell war galleon drifted broadside into the current, smashing against a smaller craft. Firepots tipped. Green shadows flickered on water. A spark, just one, touched spilled wildfire and the river blossomed emerald once more in a choking curtain. The current carried living torches downstream, against the dock pilings, beneath the bridge nearest the Dragon Pit ruins. Robert felt heat on his face, though it was a quarter-mile off. He ground his teeth. "Pull that damn ship clear." Tyrion shouted orders down a speaking tube. Bells rang. For the moment the flames stayed east of the main harbor, but smoke boiled high enough to hide Viserion as he made a low pass. Only the shriek and the sudden vacuum of air alerted the Scorpion crew before his claws shredded timber and flesh alike. "Signal Gendry," Robert barked. The young Smith Prince, acknowledged bastard, stood amid a knot of armorers directing the heavy crank. He raised a gauntlet. The contraption swiveled, tracking Viserion as the dragon struggled to regain altitude. Gendry yelled, "Release!" The silver glass bolt tore away with an otherworldly whistle. It caught Viserion not at the heart but where wing meets breast. Shallow entry, but even a scratch sufficed. Poison bled into veins, starlight spidering across scales. Viserion shrieked, flapped once, twice, and then something inside him snapped audible even from the walls. He toppled sideways. The impact outside the city shook bricks loose from parapets. A geyser of dust and shards rose. The dragon lay heaving, spasms racking his body. On the plain, Daenerys spurred forward. Grey Worm shouted, but she was already out of formation, hair streaming, eyes fixed only on Viserion's form convulsing against churned soil. She reached him amidst a storm of arrows, most plinking off her borrowed plate or sinking into the dead oxen around her horse. She slid from saddle and ran, falling once in the mud. When her palm touched Viserion's cheek, the dragon's eyes rolled. Liquid glaze crept like frost across gold iris. She sobbed his name in Valyrian. He coughed smoke and shards. One last breath rattled. Silence. Rhaegal saw. His roar split the sky with sorrow so fierce the Unsullied wavered. He folded wings and dropped, arrow-like, straight for the mud gate. Robert saw death. "Brace!" he thundered. Archers fell to a knee, shields overhead. The crank crossbow fired again, but Rhaegal barrel rolled. The bolt whizzed harmlessly into smoke. Dragonfire slammed the battlements in a fan of incandescent orange. Stone boiled. Men vanished. Robert shielded his eyes and felt beard singe. Beside him, the scorpion collapsed, wheels aflame. Tyrion dragged him backward. "This wall's lost." They retreated down an inner stair even as Rhaegal raked a claw through crenellations, scattering limestone like dice. Below, Goldcloak scrambled. A few heroes tried grapnel hooks, only to be swept aside by tail lash. Robert reached the yard, wheezing. He looked about for fresh defense, and found only rubble, bodies, and Gendry's smiths hauling a second silverbolt to the remaining crank. The crew had no clear line. Flame licked their wheels. "Move it!" Robert roared, seized the winch handle, and with Gendry's aid slewed the great bow toward Rhaegal's turning silhouette. Up on the plain, the Unsullied remained steady, but Dothraki howls changed pitch from triumph to fury. They charged the ditch, vaulting over burning beams with insane grace. Scorpions on the north wall pivoted too late. Arak blades flashed among the surviving sellswards outside the gate, cutting a bloody path. Daenerys rose from Viserion's still body, face smeared with black ash and blood. She saw her Khalasar sweeping forward, saw the wall burn, and for a moment hope and vengeance fought inside her ribs. Then she climbed upon a fresh horse and rode with them, shouting orders she couldn't hear over roaring in her ears. In the yard, the crank bow remained 2 turns from cocked. Rhaegal, perhaps sensing its threat, abandoned the rampart and dove into the harbor smokebank, blind to archers but safe from line-of-sight fire. Harper's bells clanged madly as the dragon flickered through green-tinted haze, chasing the Tyrell galleon ablaze mid-river. His flame met emerald and exploded into sheets of colors none had words for. The shockwave cracked masts, toppled houses along the riverfront, and drove a spray of wildfire droplets across the nearest pier where barrels of lamp oil were stacked for the Navy. Robert watched the pier erupt. Ice filled his guts. At this rate, half the city would burn whether Daenerys wished or not. He turned to Gendry, voice raw. "Order ships scuttled at the mouth. We cannot allow flames into the inner harbor." Gendry hesitated. "But men still aboard. Now!" Robert slammed his hammer into a water butt, sloshing. Sparks hissed out. Gendry ran. Tyrion returned from the gateway stair, cloak smoking. The walls breached. He coughed, wiping grit. "Only one more inner curtain before she's through. Then we fight there," Robert rasped. "Where's Stannis?" "South perimeter holding for now." Robert hefted hammer, newly dented. "Tell him to hold longer." He strode toward the Bailey gate. Jaime appeared then, limping but armored, sword sheathed. "If the queen thinks wildfire hidden elsewhere, she'll torch the city from within," Jaime warned breathlessly. "I've drained the biggest vault, but there are smaller caches I could not reach." Robert met the Kingslayer's eyes. "We buy time to evacuate. That's all." He clapped Jaime's shoulder. "You get the children out." Jaime nodded once. Then, incredibly, he knelt. "Forgive me, Your Grace." Robert's brows knit. "For what?" Jaime's throat worked. "For failing one king already." The moment snapped when a temple bell collapsed behind them, hurling cinders over the courtyard. They parted, one for stairs, the other for the royal quarter. Outside the river gate, Daenerys rallied Dothraki and Unsullied into combined wedge, using smoldering wagons as moving shields against arrows. Her eyes watered from smoke. Still, she kept them fixed on the inner curtain where archers busied themselves. "Forward," she whispered, spurring. Grey Worm blew a horn. Drums answered. They surged. Rhaegal re-emerged from smoke, trailing a half-crushed mast in one claw like a spear of charred oak. His left wing bore fresh punctures but still held air. He roared, as though announcing his mother's charge. An answering roar from the city, Robert's voice, echoed across the gap. Some distance behind Daenerys, a company of river lords hoisted Tully banners. Among them Brynden Tully rode, bow across saddle. His orders had been to hold reserve, but seeing gap widen in the ditch, he signaled advance. Arrows darkened the sky, giving Unsullied forward edge time to breach. On the wall, Cersei Lannister arrived flanked by Qyburn. Blood spattered on his sleeves, and a score of crossbowmen. Her green eyes widened on the battlefield's chaos. "Where is the mountain?" Qyburn spilled words about missing in vaults. She spat a curse. "Fine. Have these men target the queen." "The queen wears plate," Qyburn cautioned. "Aim for the horse." They did. But Daenerys, even at speed, felt danger prickle. She wrenched reins just as a bolt whickered where her hip had been. The horse screamed. A second bolt punched its chest. She toppled, landing hard in mud. Before archers could reload, Unsullied shield wall closed around her. She rose gasping, ears ringing. In that instant, a serrated barbed bolt from the last silver-glass weapon streaked. Fate's final dart. Gendry fired at himself, tears in eyes, aiming for the dragon's heart. But a gust from River Bay, conjured by rising heat, nudged trajectory. The bolt speared Rhaegal's left shoulder, wedging but not piercing deep enough to bleed the poison. Rhaegal screeched and clawed at the shaft mid-flight, snapped 2 feet off, then fury overcame agony. His descent became vengeance. Flame sheeted across the portion of wall where Cersei and Qyburn stood. Crossbowmen crumpled. Qyburn's scream cut short when molten stone jetted from parapet and flung him into the city. Cersei herself, protected by a Kingsguard shield, staggered back from the brink, hair ablaze. A squire smothered it with a cloak. She flailed and shrieked. Rage, terror. The hiss of burning hair filled her nostrils. She screamed Robert's name, then Jaime's, then simply screamed. Rhaegal veered low and bellied onto the corpse-littered lane inside wall, sliding through 2 towers before coming to rest yards from the stables. Tail flicked debris. He rose, bleeding black steam. Half the palace district now lay open to the sky. Daenerys advanced through the breach on foot, mud half-frozen sucking at her boots. Unsullied poured after her. Within minutes she stood where Rhaegal waited, massive head lowered so she could stroke a soot-black nostril. The shaft still jutted, inch of bitter metal. She did not pull it yet. There would be time or there would not. She looked up at the red keep, spires wreathed in drifting ash, and steeled her heart. Robert reached the base of Maegor's Holdfast as the first Unsullied broke through the royal square. Scorpions could not pivot to fire within tight streets. Battle became man against spear lines. Gold cloaks fell back stubbornly to the steps of the Great Hall. Robert joined them, hammer a storm cloud, smashing shield rims, ribs, skulls. Each breath raked his chest, but he fought as if youth returned. The final stand of kings, he thought. Above, Rhaegal crashed onto the roof of the armory, collapsing 3 levels. Sparks showered. Another blaze took hold. Maesters and septas with buckets became ignited silhouettes. Running. Jaime burst from the servants' arch, Tommen in his arms. Behind trailed 2 maids and a septa carrying Myrcella. "The littlest dragons," Jaime shouted over din, irony lost. "I'll take them through the tunnels." Robert, wide-eyed, nodded. Blood spattered his brow. "Go!" Then Rhaegal roared again, the sound of entire mountains dying. Archers on upper balconies fled. The dragon's chest expanded, but flame did not come. Blood dribbled down long teeth. He was spent, yet still dangerous. Daenerys emerged atop the steps littered with broken antlers from the crown sigils. Grey Worm flanked her, shield retrieved, and behind them unsullied 3 ranks. Across the distance, Robert met her gaze. "It ends," she called, voice cracked but sure. "Yield. Spare your city your ashes." Robert spat blood. "We all die someday, but my city dies a man, not a slave." Daenerys lifted a hand to Regal. The dragon did not flame. Instead, he released a rattling exhale of black soot. She faced Robert again. "Then may the gods judge us both." She advanced, Grey Worm signaling. The Unsullied marched step by step up the wide stone flight. Gold Cloaks, outnumbered, drew back. Robert raised hammer in salute. Strange, honoring the discipline of soldiers about to kill him. He sprang forward with a roar that shook banners. Hammer met shield, splitting bronze, but Unsullied lines absorbed the impact, ranks parting to trap his momentum, spears stabbing. Robert twisted, ripping one spear free, clubbing another aside. He broke through initial rank, but the second closed, lances striking armor gaps. A point slid beneath his pauldron, puncturing lung. He bellowed and swung still, shattering a helm. Daenerys halted 3 steps below him, horror mingling with reverence. For an instant, there was no sound but Robert's labored wheeze. She said, "I do not wish this." Robert coughed blood. "Wars aren't wishes. Finish it." She raised hand to halt spears, stepped forward. Unsullied parted. She knelt, placing palm on his chestplate's dent. His hammer dangled loosely, fingers numb. "Swear," she whispered. "Swear on the memory of your brothers. End the fight, yield the crown, and your people will see dawn." Robert tried to laugh. It came as red froth. "I swore once to protect the realm. I broke that." He looked past her to the sundered gates, to fires beyond, to children screaming somewhere in alleys. A tremor shook him. "Don't break it after me." She realized he relented, not to her, but to fend off deeper disgrace. She squeezed his gauntlet, then eased him to sit on step. Grey Worm barked orders. Unsullied grounded spears. Trumpets blew cessation. Jaime returned in time to see Robert slump. He rushed, sword raised, only to stop as Daenerys stepped aside. "He lives," she told him. "He must live to tell them." Jaime knelt by Robert, pressing cloth to wound. Robert stared up, pain receding, eyes softer than Jaime remembered since the trident. "Tell Cersei. Tell her to keep our boy safe," he murmured. Then, as if remembering Jaime's love, he chuckled mirthlessly. "And you too, brother." Jaime's throat thickened. "Rest. Maester's coming." Robert's lids drooped. The sunrise gilded his brow, turning blood to copper. Bells began ringing across the city. A different rhythm now, spontaneous and discordant, born on confusion rather than command. Daenerys turned, looking upon King's Landing's chaos. Wildfires still smoldered on the river, smoke coiled from broken roofs. But another smoke rose too, white plumes from bakeries that had stilled for weeks, reigniting ovens to feed survivors emerging timidly. She tasted ash and hope mingling. Above, Regal folded aching wings, huge head settling on paws. His golden eye, one unclouded, fixed on her. She touched his muzzle. "Home," she whispered. In distant alleyways, gold cloaks began lowering lion banners. A wind from Duskendale blew, snapping cloth free. Somewhere a child cried, "The dragons spare us!" And others took up the cry like chant. Tyrion limped onto the steps, surveying with stunned relief. "Gods," he breathed. "It may be done." Daenerys glanced at him. "Not done. Begun anew." She surveyed Grey Worm's ranks. "Bind every wound, theirs and ours. Bury the dead. Then open the gates. Let the hungry share the Tully grain." He bowed. "A queen who fights her own fire. Remarkable." Flames still licked along the harbor's edge, but small folk on skiffs daringly rowed to douse them. The Tyrell flagship, half-burnt, lowered its sails in surrender. Lady Olenna's banner gave a mocking flap before rolling limp. As the sun climbed higher, The frost melted into runnels carrying blood away in thin rosy streams that vanished into cracked gutters. Bells gradually aligned into solemn peal. The call to lay down arms, the call of a realm raw-boned and weary. High atop the red keep, the stag banner drooped, scorched holes showing daylight. A lone guardsman climbed the mast and cut it loose. Fabric drifted down like a falling cloak, landing on stone where Cersei wept guarded by a single knight. Jaime found her there an hour later. She saw shard pendant glinting at Daenerys' throat across the square and spat, but tears washed ash to her chin. "Is this how it ends?" she asked. Jaime embraced her gently, thinking of broken crowns, of wildfire drained, of dragons bled. "No," he said, "it's how something else begins." On the rubble-strewn steps of Maegor's Holdfast, Daenerys Targaryen watched snowflakes swirl again, yet melt where they landed upon Rhaegal's warm scales. She raised her voice, hoarse but resolute, to the gathered thousands. "This city has burned enough. Let no flame rise save those that bake bread and warm children. By the old gods and the new, by the drowned and the many-faced, I swear no one shall starve while I fly." Silence met her words, then murmurs, then cheers, small at first but swelling. She closed her eyes, felt Rhaegal's breath steady, felt Viserion's memory like coal at her heart. The dance of dragon and storm was over. Winter's sigh drifted through the broken walls, asking what came next. She opened her eyes. "Come," she said to Tyrion, to Grey Worm, to Yora stepping forward bloodied but smiling. "We have a kingdom to mend."